GBNews.
A GB News People's poll finds a majority of Brits would rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. Should this be a concern for the leadership hopefuls or not?
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 26th of August. It's a bank holiday weekend, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, on your radio and online. So wherever you are and whatever you're up to today, you can take us with you. These are your top stories.
Worrying times for the Conservative Party. A GB News People's poll finds that Keir Starmer as Prime Minister is a better option than either of the leadership candidates. What say you? We'll run you through the results and we'll reveal what word springs to mind most quickly, I suppose, when people were asked about the front-runner Liz Truss.
A new energy price cap will be announced this morning at about 7 o'clock, and it doesn't look good. We'll do our best to explain what it's going to mean to you and what little things we could all be doing to reduce our bills.
Plus, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, brings us a very special report.
The decks of these border force vessels are packed with Channel migrants, 60% of them from one tiny nation, Albania. We report on the emergency deal to deport those with no right to be here.
And did you see the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, getting heckled outside a London hospital?
Jobs has protected.
Are you going to do
businesses.
anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we
12
are
years,
taking...
you've done all about it. People have died and all you've done is nothing.
And probably like me, I know how that lady feels because I've got my own story to tell. Just in the last few days, 2 of my family members were kept waiting for hours for an ambulance. And instead, in the end, when they pleaded and pleaded, a taxi was sent to collect them.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Also, as it is a bank holiday weekend, are you attempting to fly out of the country over the next few days? About 290,000 airline seats have been cancelled this weekend alone. We'll see if the airports can cope with the extra capacity.
And that too seems to be absolutely crazy, doesn't it? As ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'd love to hear from you. I must say, this ambulance thing is, well, questions have got to be asked and answered on it. And Steve Barclay didn't answer that question properly. Really.
No, and he did. I mean, look, if you're in the middle of an interview, it's clearly caught him by surprise. However, he's an experienced politician. He should know how to react to that, and he didn't react very well to that lady.
No.
I mean, maybe he hasn't got the answers, but even so, there are different ways to react to it.
Yeah, well, he's been in government a very long time now. As she said, the Tories have been in for 12 years. And it's it just doesn't feel right at the moment that our NHS seems to be facing all sorts of problems. And as I said, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'll bet if you're watching right now, you've probably got a story to tell about having to call an ambulance, or you know somebody who did have to call an ambulance. And the ambulance service, they don't say it'll be 10 minutes, it'll be half an hour, I'm sorry, it'll be an hour. They're often saying, I simply can't give you an estimate of when we can get an ambulance to you.
You see, that's ridiculous, because there are all these targets, and we report on it all the time, don't we, saying, you know, they've got to be there in 4 minutes, 6 minutes, or whatever it might be. And if they're saying you just can't get one, what are you meant to do?
Yeah, and there's a consultant, somebody who's been with the National Health Service very many years, writing in the Daily Mail today, saying that it's like that at her hospital. She said the trouble is, if you do get an ambulance, by the time the ambulance gets you to hospital, there often isn't a bed in A&E to give you, so you have to be treated in the ambulance. And that treatment, and that can include things like X-rays and blood tests, happening in the ambulance instead of in A&E.
So it ties up the ambulance?
It ties up the ambulance for hours and hours, and it's not just one ambulance. Apparently, if you go to most of the big city hospitals, certainly at the moment, you will see ambulance queuing up and not moving, and they're not able to go on to their next emergency call because they're still dealing with somebody inside the back of their truck. So that's not how an ambulance service should be working, is it?
So yet another crisis for the government to deal with if they want to win the confidence of the people whenever it comes round to the next general election. And we're asking this morning, have the wheels come off the Conservative Party?
A GBNews People's poll finds the majority of Brits would prefer a Labour government with Keir Starmer at the helm rather than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak.
But it comes as Labour currently hold a 14-point lead over the Tories. The findings were conducted by People Polling and also discovered that the word that comes to mind the most about the frontrunner in the leadership battle, Liz Truss, is untrustworthy.
Which doesn't really look good, does it, at the moment? Well, we're joined now by Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, Matthew Goodwin. Yes, does it seem to you as well that the wheels has come off the Tory truck?
The wheels are coming off. A 14-point lead for the Labour Party is essentially a Labour majority, were that to be replicated at the next general election. And, you know, reminding ourselves, the Conservatives took a huge gamble by deciding to get rid of Boris Johnson and elect somebody new. What we can see in these numbers is that actually a lot of people now have tuned out. They're not lining up behind the Conservatives. Keir Starmer and Labour are comfortably ahead in the polls. And this really is going to pile pressure on whoever becomes the next leader of the party and whoever becomes the next Prime Minister. There is a risk here, clearly in these numbers, that if things don't change, the Conservatives are looking at a sort of 1997-2001 scenario where they not only lose that all-important red wall in northern England, but they also lose a large chunk of that blue wall across the south, and that would be a nightmare scenario for the party.
So that, I mean, this is a clear case, is it, of the government losing an election, as it were, rather than the opposition winning one. And is that down, I mean, do you think that is down to all this hoo-ha and this very long, it seems like a very long leadership battle between these two people that is just turning people off?
Well, I think you just saw what's playing out in the clip that you just showed and what Anne was mentioning about the problems your friends and relatives have been having just trying to get an ambulance. I think the problem facing the Conservative Party at the moment is that it simply looks adrift from the problems that are facing the rest of the country. And when a political party or a governing party is seen to be on its own side and not on the side of the people, things start to fall apart very quickly. So, you know, if I were sort of in Team Truss or in Team Sunak or whoever ends up running number 10 from September 5th, the first priority is, I think, they've got to re-establish a relationship with the country as quickly as possible, which is holding their hands up and say, you know, this hasn't been a great summer for the Conservative Party. The government's made a lot of mistakes. But here's a plan for the winter. Here's a plan for how we're actually going to get through the most difficult period in 50 years.
And Liz Truss herself, who is guaranteed, or they say guaranteed to get it, certainly the front runner by the sound of it, she doesn't do very well herself up against, in your poll, up against Keir Starmer, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. So if you ask voters, would you rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer or a Conservative government under Liz Truss? Keir Starmer currently wins hands down, not even close. If you then say to voters, what do you think about Liz Truss? Just tell me one word. What comes to mind? We're not, putting words in voters' mouths. We're saying, give us a word. And the dominant theme is untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Because why would people necessarily say that? I mean, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know enough about her to say whether she's trustworthy or not.
So that is a very valid point, but here's what I think is going on. The Conservative brand has become so tarnished over the last few months that actually it's infecting everybody within that party. And if Liz Truss becomes the next Prime Minister, the immediate priority for her team will be to draw a line between the last administration and her administration, because that legacy, the chaos, the turmoil, the division, is already clearly damaging her brand in the eyes of many voters.
Do you think part of the problem has been during this leadership election that both candidates they're addressing the Tory faithful because they're the only people with a vote on this? They're not actually saying the things that rather might be more popular for a general election, appealing to the masses of people.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think if you ask people what are the top issues in the country, they say, I want to talk about the cost of living, I want to talk about ambulances, GPs, public services, but I also want to talk to some extent about things like migration, but they also want to talk about things that the candidates haven't really gone anywhere near. It isn't just the Channel crossings. They want to talk about the level of overall migration in the country, which in the eyes of many people is still too high. And that conversation hasn't really been taking place. So there's the broader problem here facing the party, I think, is it's got to come out of the gates with a compelling, big, bold idea about what it's going to do over the next, not just 1 or 2 years, but over the next 4, 5, 6 years. What's the big plan for getting us through this cost of living crisis?
I mean, the advantage that Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak have got on this is they've got a couple of years before the next general election. I mean, they're not going to throw anything at us much sooner than that, you wouldn't think. So they've got... do you think they're prepared to take this sort of hit now, knowing that come September, they're going to go at it like a bull at a gate?
Yeah, there was
see where they go.
There was an interesting piece a few days ago which said that the sort of strategy in Team Truss is essentially survive the first 100 days, get through this winter, and then start to set out the priorities for the next few years in government. I'm not convinced that's the right strategy. I think, people are going to want to know, where does she want to take the country? What's the big, bold plan for making the best out of Brexit, for seizing the advantages that comes with it? What's the plan for defending the country's borders, for rebooting productivity and economic growth, all of those kinds of things? And I think that's ultimately what they're going to have to set out as quickly as possible. The Labour Party, what's striking to me at least, is 14 points ahead, despite doing very little at all.
That's just what I was going to say. I mean, we haven't heard very much from them at all. Now, if you put that to them, they say, well, yes, but because all you media people are just talking about the leadership election. But, they're not exactly coming out very strongly and saying exactly the points that you've just been saying. Well, we haven't heard very much from Keir Starmer at all.
Well, they don't need to say anything. As Stephen referenced, governments lose elections, oppositions often don't win them. We've seen some positioning around Brexit. We've seen Keir Starmer try and shore up that support in the Red Wall by saying he'd honour Brexit and so on. Whether voters find that convincing, it's a question that we'll sort of leave hanging in the air. But I think ultimately the Labour Party is just biding its time. There's one thing voters throughout history don't like: divided parties. They hate divided parties.
And that's what we're seeing
divided
at the moment, isn't it?
And what we've seen for not just the summer, what we've seen for a year and a half is a party and a government tearing itself apart. Governments really alienate voters by acting that way. And so the Conservatives now, if they're going to survive, have got to get unity and have got to get a plan together before that next election in late 24 or even early 25.
Yeah, OK. We shall see. Matthew Goodwin, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. What do you think about all of that? I have to say, I think it's a bit of a surprise because the polls were comparatively close up until quite recently. But what a big shift
But
there
we've been
has
through
been.
days and days and days, one strike after another. Cost of living crisis seems to be escalating. And Liz Truss came out just today, I think, or at least her people have come out and said she now realises that the energy crisis is going to define her premiership. Well, duh, couldn't we have told her that weeks ago?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's not good. It's not a good look, is it?
No. I think it all seems a bit pointless at the moment because you say unless something goes horrifically wrong for Liz Truss, she's going to win.
Anyway,
So,
yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let's just bring you up to date with all the stories today, and that's sticking with the leadership election. And Rishi Sunak has vowed never to let political correctness get in the way of people's safety. He made the comments at the latest Tory leadership hustings last night, saying stop and search is a good example of a technique that works, that police forces are not always using for reasons that are not right.
The cost of the UK's asylum system has topped £2 billion a year, with the highest number of claims for 2 decades and record delays for people awaiting a decision. The Home Office says over 63,000 applications were made in the year up to June. The figures were published as more migrants were brought ashore at Kent after crossing the Channel yesterday.
The family of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot in her home in Liverpool, are appealing for the public to do the right thing to help find the gunman. It's after police said they won't rest until they find who killed Olivia. Officers are urging the gunman to surrender.
More than 100,000 Royal Mail workers will join a walkout today in a dispute over pay. The Communication Workers Union says its members want what they describe as a proper pay rise after they rejected a 2% offer. More strikes are planned for later in the month.
You go away for 2 weeks, you come back and everyone's on strike.
Well, it
again.
must feel like that. Yes, it really must, doesn't it?
Honestly.
not-
I just, we were talking about, when I was away, we were talking about this, and you said, well, what do? You can't give everyone who's striking what they want because we'd be bankrupt in a fortnight.
Yes, but you also feel that the rising number and the escalation of strikes and everything is just such an obvious sign to any politician that they're not doing well enough, whoever they are, and that we, the public, need the country being run better.
Well, yeah.
Don't we? It's just a sign of frustration, I think.
Which is
totally understandable.
Which gets worse when you look at the cost of living crisis, obviously, is the driver behind a lot of this. And that's going to get worse because we're going to get more news later on this morning. In about 45 minutes or so, we should find out what the new energy price cap will be.
Ofgem, the UK energy regulator, is expected to announce another huge jump in how much utility companies can charge you. And it's forecasted to be an even further jump this morning because the energy price relates to customers on standard tariffs and will come into effect on the 1st of October.
Yeah, it could jump by 80% on where we currently are. Let's see how it's affecting both ends of the country this morning. First of all, we'll talk to Davy Donaldson, who's in Glasgow for us. Morning, Davy.
Yeah, good morning, Stephen. Yeah, I have to say a lot of people are waiting to see what happens, but I think most people know what's going to happen, sadly. I think we all know what's coming. It's like the Grim Reaper, I feel, standing here giving you this news. But yeah, certainly it's going to go up by around about £1,500. So that's going to have a huge impact on people's bills, clearly, up to around the £3,500 mark. So you can imagine how that's going to affect people. A lot of people obviously clearly unhappy about it. You talked about people striking because they need that extra money in the pay packet simply to pay the bills. Of course, this is not going to come into effect until the 1st of October. Yesterday I spoke to some people in Edinburgh to get their thoughts on the latest energy crisis.
It's going to get worse, and a lot of people are going to be pushed into poverty. And the government needs to do more about it. The Westminster government needs to sort it out. Finally, we're hearing the opposition, Labour, saying something positive to address it. I think they should be doing, the government should be following their lead. They're finally stepping up and showing some leadership.
A lot of people are going to be extremely poor who aren't already poor. But it's complicated because the oil companies make a lot of profit. There's the billing part as well. It's complicated, but no, it's wrong.
I mean, my energy's gone up. I think they want about £600 a month at the moment. from 200. So, yeah, it's a big jump. They're still getting 200 a month, though.
Yeah, obviously we heard people clearly very unhappy about what's happening, but there is some solutions. There are some solutions being offered. The chief executive here of Scottish Power, he said he's going to freeze prices for 2 years, and that will generate £100 billion in terms of revenue that people would normally have to pay. We've also heard from British Gas, who are going to donate 10% of their profits to help customers cope with soaring bills for the duration of the energy crisis. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. However, I think the news that we're going to hear around about 40 minutes' time is not going to be good.
No, indeed. Davey, thank you. Say thank you. Don't mean thank you at all, really, Davey. It's
not his fault. Don't shoot the messenger.
£291 a month, that works out at, and that's the average. So an awful lot of people are going to be paying a lot more than that. And
we know that that's going to go up by the 1st of October, and then there will be another rise in January.
Which sounds, and you sort of think, well, perhaps they shouldn't bring it forward every 3 months as they're doing now. But I remember an expert I had on a few weeks ago was saying, well, actually, that's a good thing, because when the prices do start to fall, they'll fall much faster than we would have seen.
I hope so. You just can't see that happening almost, can you?
No, not at the minute.
No, and I wonder if it's changing your habits just around and about the house. I was reading that one of the good tips is simply not to use a tumble dryer. They use up a heck of a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
But does that mean if you've got children and everything, a house full of wet washing? Switching lights off everywhere you go. I mean, I must say, I never used to be quite as careful as I am being just in the last few weeks, switching lights off all over the place. Do you know, I used to leave a light on for the dog. When I come out early in the morning, it seems horrible to leave a dark house behind. And so I certainly always left on the kitchen light or one of the other lights so that the dog would feel,
Yeah, well, I get that. I mean,
but today I didn't. I left her in the dark. Isn't that awful? I feel terrible about it.
Oh, it should be all right.
She's a dog. I know she's a dog.
A few years ago, I changed all my light bulbs for LED ones, so at least that saves a huge amount of power. But I've changed it so that my hot water is on for a shorter amount of time and the heating won't be going on when I would normally put it on.
Yeah, and depending on what sort of boiler you've got, it's not necessarily a good idea to turn it off. It's just to use the thermostat, maybe, if you're trying to do that. But I just wonder how it's changing your habits at the moment. And we're still in summer, aren't we?
Well, I'm living in dread at the moment because I've got one of those price deals, where it's a fixed price.
For how long?
And it runs out at the end of this month.
Oh. And then you've got to figure out what to do.
Well, they say the cheapest thing we can offer you is the standard variable.
Nice.
That's cheaper than any deal now. So, just at the mercies of what's going to happen.
Yeah, how are you working it out? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
And if you need something else to moan about, and none of us do really, but there's more trouble for holidaymakers as some airlines cancel seats on flights. We'll bring you an update in a couple of minutes.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter, some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales and the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers start to drift northeastwards. They tend to ease, but a few of them will keep going. And then a lot of cloud in this zone from eastern Scotland into parts of northern and central England. Where we've got the cloud, temperatures staying up in the double figures, but actually where we've got some clear spells, cool night to come, especially for northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, 5 to 9 Celsius in places here. But that's where the best of the sunshine will be first thing this weekend. Some cloud elsewhere across eastern Scotland into northern and central England. And where we've got that cloud, a few showers will get going by the afternoon. They'll be fairly well scattered, and away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells. And with light winds, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Temperatures up into the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north. Similar conditions prevail for Sunday and, of course, Bank Holiday Monday. Plenty of sunny spells and light winds. Feeling a bit cooler on the coast, and there'll be the odd shower inland, but otherwise plenty of warm sunshine.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.25 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
And Andrew has already emailed in and said, hope you enjoyed your holiday, Stephen.
Oh, yes.
You look refreshed. Welcome back. And then he says, I've had enough of everything that's happening here in the UK, and I've decided to move back to Australia. Things may not be brilliant there, but it's better than all the issues the UK is going through. I moved to the UK when we voted for Brexit, thinking that we were going to take back control over how we run our own country. How naive I feel now.
Oh, that's interesting. Janice says the Conservatives have scored a massive own goal, and the only way to slam the brakes in their freefall is to reverse this and reinstate Boris, or at the very least, get him on the ballot paper. Voters are seeing their actions as undemocratic. Isn't going to happen, though, Janice.
So many people, though, are emailing in and saying it's the Tories' fault for getting rid of Boris. Eileen says a great deal of people still love Boris and most will not vote Conservative without him.
Kathy says, I've always voted Conservative, but I won't ever again. They've betrayed my trust. They got rid of a PM with a huge majority and they've done everything to get him out. It was calling him Johnson instead of Boris, and when that didn't work, mass resignations. They are shameful.
And that is very true, that an awful lot of people still hold, and that's why, it may be why Liz Truss is in the lead. Although not hugely, but she does seem to be, because people will not forgive Rishi Sunak for what they see as an act of betrayal. Whereas Liz Truss hasn't done that, but, you know.
See, I mean, it's so interesting. You know, what Boris was, you know, a man with a lot of flaws. You can't get away from that. I mean, that's just a reality. But that doesn't seem to matter to an awful lot of people. Oh, just quickly, I saw one on... John says, I don't believe that Keir Starmer would win an election if he was against anyone. He's a complete waste of time without any policies. But as Matthew Goodwin was saying, he doesn't need any policies at the moment, just needs to keep quiet and watch the Conservative Party implode.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I said that poll, Keir Starmer's got a 14-point lead at the moment. It's huge. It's huge.
And I know that the Tories at the moment are mid-term, which is always a bad, dodgy time for any government. And, of course, they're in the middle of a leadership election, so maybe they'll hope by September 6th, I think, is it when...
5th,
yes, when Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak become leader. Maybe they will hope for a period of stability and then they can grow their popularity again with us, the ordinary voting people.
Yeah, well, 2 years, as it might be to the next general election, is a long, long time in politics, so who knows what's going to happen.
How could you turn around all of this by then?
Don't know.
If you've got the answer, get in touch. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Now, if perhaps, like me, you wanted to just get away from it all from a couple of weeks and you were thinking the bank holiday weekend was a good way to do it by road, rail or air, I'm afraid there is more bad news.
On top of the traffic jams and all the train disruptions, airlines have cut 290,000 seats from the August bank holiday flight schedules.
Let's talk to the man who knows, Simon Calder, travel editor from The Independent, who joins us now. Morning to you, Simon. What's going on? Why have they cut nearly 300,000 seats?
Well, basically, most of the cancellations are on British Airways from Heathrow and on EasyJet from Gatwick. And they've done that because they overpromised what they thought they could deliver this year. In addition, over the summer, EasyJet at Gatwick and British Airways at Heathrow have been capped in the number of passengers and flights that they can handle by the airport operators, simply because, as you and I have talked about before your holiday, long before you went away, we've seen so much chaos at the airports. And so, therefore, exactly as you say, 290,000 seats taken out, that represents 1,800 flights to and from the UK. And I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but I'm afraid there's yet more cancellations today. I'm seeing, for example, 4 EasyJet flights between Gatwick and Lisbon have been cancelled. That's as a result of a ground handling strike at airports in Portugal. So not looking great for today. And if you're travelling at the weekend, and you haven't booked your flight, well, good luck with that, particularly if you're trying to fly into the UK. Just check a few sort of benchmark fares. Barcelona to Heathrow, cheapest flight you'll find, £531 one way. And from Malaga to Manchester, a few seats available around the £300 mark, and that doesn't include your baggage. And if I may, if you're going to be at the airport today, Stephen, your timing was very good, actually, because I've spoken to Belfast, to Birmingham, to London Gatwick, and they say that today, in terms of overall passenger numbers, they're going to be at their busiest. So you've got this strange situation, flights being cancelled wholesale, and yet it's still going to be very busy at the airports.
And, of course, the rest of us can't fly Simon Calder Airlines. We all wonder, when we talk to you, you're somewhere else in the world. How do you get there?
I just hope for the best. And look, that's a really good question, Anne, because actually, despite all the chaos we've seen, people who have booked in advance, and I'm speaking to you from beautiful Marseille in southern France. If you booked in advance, then the overwhelming odds are that your flight is going to go ahead as normal. The people for whom it's going to be tricky are those who held out, understandably, given the cost of living crisis. They took one look at the fares over the summer and thought, hang on, that's 50, 60, 100% higher than I paid last time. I'm going to wait for a late bargain. Well, guess what? Because of all those cuts in flights, there simply aren't the bargains around. But if you are lucky enough not to be constrained by school terms, then give it a couple of weeks and you will suddenly find that things reverse and that the airlines will be saying, oh, Anne, Stephen, why don't you have another holiday? We can offer you some really good deals. But it's a messy old summer.
It certainly is. Simon, thanks very much indeed. Hope you get back whenever you want to come back or wherever you're moving on to next. Thank you for joining us.
What a life.
I think he's got his own airline.
I think he probably has. Oddly enough, I'm in a WhatsApp group with some of my people I went to university with. And there's a message from 5 o'clock this morning from Steve Downer, who's in Porto. So that's Portugal, isn't it?
Yes.
We just found out our flight from Porto to Gatwick has been cancelled, scrambling to work out some options. So what do you do if your flight is cancelled if you're over there and there's no clear way of getting back?
I don't know.
Well, I saw that this morning when I woke up and then...
I know somebody who was leaving London yesterday to go up to Edinburgh for the festival. And when they arrived at the station to catch their train, they weren't allowed on it because it was already overcrowded.
Right.
And then the next train was cancelled. So you just end up waiting hours and hours at the station for, hopefully, the next train in, even though that's an amazingly main line.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, odd.
Stay at home this weekend.
If you've got a weird travel story for us, do let us know. If you've been struggling to get somewhere, or you, like Stephen was saying there, have you been sort of left abandoned almost abroad and had to struggle to find a way back?
Oh, that's just a nightmare in my book. Now, GB News has learnt that 60% of those currently arriving here in the UK across the channel in small boats are from Albania, a tiny nation of less than 3 million people.
Well, an emergency agreement between the UK and Albania will come into force next week, aiming to rapidly remove those Albanians who arrive by small boats and who the government believes have absolutely no right to be here.
And as our Home and Security editor Mark White reports, those Albanians who enter the UK illegally could be on a deportation flight home within a few weeks.
Arriving into Dover Harbour, the Border Force vessel Ranger, her decks packed with Channel migrants, most likely to be from Albania. In fact, we can confirm that 60% of those currently arriving into UK waters on small boats are from that tiny nation. In truth, this is a crisis within a crisis, which has so concerned UK authorities, it resulted in what amounts to an emergency agreement between the UK and Albanian governments to rapidly remove those with no right to asylum. The British government believes that's likely to be the vast majority of those arriving from what is a peaceful nation on the Balkan Peninsula. We've been told that 6 in 10 of those arriving on small boats at the moment are from Albania, more than 6,000 already this year and growing rapidly. Compare that to just 2 years ago, when only 50 Albanians arrived by small boat. Here in the Albanian capital, Tirana, this is also an existential crisis for those in government here, as the country faces rapid depopulation. Since the 90s, the population has fallen by more than 15% and now numbers fewer than 2.8 million people. The crisis is most acute in Albania's rural towns and villages, where the vast majority of their young have up sticks and left. In fact, Albania is one of the few nations in the world where there are more of its people living outside than inside the country. As part of the agreement with the UK, Albanian law enforcement officials will be seconded here to the Border Force processing centres at Dover Harbour and the former RAF base at Manston. We're told they'll help gather intelligence on arrivals and quickly assess those with no right to be here. Officials hope those individuals could be removed within 2 or 3 weeks of arriving. However, there's little doubt asylum lawyers will try to challenge those decisions. Nothing surrounding this growing crisis is ever straightforward. Mark White, GB News.
That's extraordinary.
Oh, it's just weird.
More Albanians possibly living outside Albania than in, where presumably there just are very few career prospects or jobs or whatever for young people. So they're trying to move and they're coming here.
It's just the fact that I just find it very strange that it's, you know, this sort of remarkable, rapid move to get people back out the country within 2 or 3 weeks. Why does it take so long?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Why does the turnaround take quite so long?
Yeah.
They have to be assessed, I suppose.
And then the lawyers jump in and try and...
Yeah.
I know, it's necessary. Some people have got a case that needs to be made and then so they can stay. I get that, but it just seems to just back everybody. I don't know. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, and do stay with us because coming up we'll be looking through this morning's newspapers.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.40, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, we were talking about our People's Poll a bit earlier, which found that the majority of people in this country, that's people, ordinary working voters, as it were, would prefer Keir Starmer and a Labour government at the moment, the way things are. We were asking, have the wheels come off the Tory wagon? And Paul has already emailed in hi and says, not only have the wheels come off the wagon is stuck in churned-up tarmac and the wheels have rolled off down the road. Can't understand why the Tory party think it's acceptable to have a leadership contest whilst the UK falls apart. What a contemptible way to treat a voting majority. It's almost as if everyone who voted for Boris is being told now to sit on the naughty step and think about their actions. The Conservatives will never see a majority again. The next Parliament will be some sort of coalition. So inaction will then be the order of the day.
Steve says, morning to you. The Conservatives have not been in power for 12 years in Wales. Labour has, but same problem. The Conservatives have not been in power for 12 years in Scotland. The SNP has, but same problems. Which is a fair point.
Janice says it wouldn't be Keir Starmer that runs the country. It would be the militant unions with open borders and woke agendas. No, thank you.
I'll keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let's have a look at the papers this morning. The Times has Liz Truss's plan to help the country with energy bills as homes brace for the price cap rise this morning.
The Guardian focuses on concerns from head teachers across England who are calling on the government to delay the return of pre-pandemic exam conditions for at least another year.
The Eye focuses on the energy price cap as some households could see their bills rise by 80%.
The Daily Express, meanwhile, claims that the current asylum system in Britain is costing taxpayers more than £2 billion a year.
The Mirror leads on the ongoing investigation into the shooting of Olivia Pratt-Corbell after her family made another plea for information.
Well, time to go through the papers now. Joining us this morning, journalist and author Ella Whelan and the editor of The Eye, Benjamin Butterworth, or former editor, yes?
No, late editor.
Late editor.
Which means the evening.
Have you died?
Oh,
Not
I
that I'm
see.
recently deceased.
That's why I didn't say late editor. It did sound as though you'd died.
No,
Apologies about that.
Rumours of my death are greatly
Clearly, yes. And welcome to Ella. Right, take us through, Ella. Taxpayers paying more than £2 billion for the current broken asylum system.
Yes, so I think everyone on either side of the immigration debate, whether you want a more liberal approach to immigration or a more conservative, restrictive one, knows that there is something going very wrong with it at the moment in terms of the fact that it isn't working. And the figures out in the Express are that it's been costing £2.1 billion in the year up to June, which is £756 million more than last year. which is, and within that cost involves things like paying for asylum seekers to stay in accommodation in hotels, the very lengthy process of processing them. And there's clearly something going on within the current moment, within this summer, which is that there is a huge amount more people arriving. Particularly, the Home Office says that the figures show that 1 in 5 are coming from Albania. And, you know, GB News covers it a lot, you know, the kind of the high numbers that we're seeing day on day arriving on the Kent coast. Now, the question is, why is this happening, and why is it costing so much? And there's kind of two sides to this. One is that there is a significant number of people arriving, and you might say that in particular kind of people traffickers based in Albania might be taking advantage of the fact that British government is in somewhat of a disarray at the moment, that there's no one really dealing with any kind of serious immigration policy. There's no, you know, the Rwanda policy, for example, is up in the air. And so there might be a flurry happening at the moment. But it's also the case that there's a more long-term problem of the asylum system itself not working. So Out Mehmet, who's often a guest on GB News, and I'm often on with him, clashing with him, because he wants a more restrictive approach to immigration, points out here, is quoted in the Express, that part of the problem is that it takes years to process, can take years to process an asylum request.
Why?
And on that, with him, I completely agree. Why? And it's pretty much down to incompetence within the Home Office. We know that, for example, with something like the Windrush scandal, so much of it was down to literally folders being lost and emails not being answered. So that we can't, you know, there is a problem with the actual issue of people traffickers and people arriving, but a large part of the problem is with the British institution of the whole process of asylum simply not working. And I think that the thing that I worry about is that what often isn't talked about is that you have people who are, OK, they're staying in hotels, but they're staying in it's not grand hotels, quite rubbish accommodation for years at a time, when in actual fact, if they are to be accepted as asylum seekers, they should be processed and then become part of society and be able to do all the things that the rest of us can do, work, contribute, you know, all the rest of it.
Which then goes hand in hand with those who aren't accepted.
And then and that's the thing, with the sort of, whether or not you agree with the Rwanda policy, I don't, the fact that it has been tied up in sort of legal battles is a problem for democracy, but also the fact that the only solution seeming to come out of Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss, particularly Liz Truss, is, I think she said something almost as crude as, I'll just send more to different African nations, which, I mean, quite clearly isn't an option if Rwanda policy isn't working. So it's quite a depressing picture.
Yes, isn't it just?
Friday morning.
Something definitely needs to be done. In the midst of dealing with all that and that huge bill, Benjamin, we're all facing up to about an 80% increase in our energy bills. Should get the news in 14 minutes or so.
Yeah, this is the iNewspaper's front page, and it's the energy cap, and of course we already expected this, but it is really expected to go to £3,500 for the average household. Now, to put that in context, the average at the moment is apparently £1,971. So this is a really incredible increase. And apparently they, you know, Ofgem, the body that monitors this, tried desperately to stop it rising so much, but there wasn't much they could do. In fact, apparently we were paying £10,000 per megawatt to a Belgian firm, which is a record amount. I'm not sure how far a megawatt goes, but apparently it's an incredible amount of money to be paying for it. And something that really amazed me in this story, actually, is the lack of help from the energy companies themselves, quite aside from the government. So, you know, the eye has profiled the big firms and how much they're offering. You've got a £35 billion rise in costs across what the houses will be paid. And the big energy firms have put up £40 million in help or discounts for their customers. British Gas, the biggest firm, has a £25 million package. Well, that's barely what they made in profits in the last couple of months. And,
that's where there's the disparity, isn't there? Because British Gas, the energy suppliers aren't making huge profits. It's the energy producers that they buy the energy from.
True, but they're still making very decent profits. And actually, in most cases, whether the UK arm or the broader arm, like Centrica, the company that owns British Gas, you know, Centrica made billions, I think £9 billion of profit. Meanwhile, British Gas made something like £30 million of profit. And so you kind of think they could be doing more to help their customers. But there's a wider point here, and Liz Truss has touched on it, and she's likely to be the Prime Minister in, what, a week and a half now, that this is really going to damage businesses, you know, quite aside from the damage it's doing to people paying their household bills. And when you start to see businesses going under, restaurants and hospitality in particular, well, then you have a knock-on effect that means that the low unemployment that we've seen, the saving grace of the last couple of years in our economic experience, is likely to also go in the complete opposite direction, and probably quite quickly.
Well, interestingly, we've probably just got time to do it. Liz Truss is now talking about ending the ban on fracking because she's committed now to energy saving and to becoming what she called a dynamo of energy security.
Yeah, and of all of Liz Truss's, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are both guilty of sort of like putting on a blindfold and picking a policy out of a hat, it feels like at the moment with these announcements. But of all of them, this makes the most sense because there has been, we know that the kind of blind spot in the energy discussion has been any kind of ability to plan in the long term for other energy solutions. There's lots of talk about renewals, and that's an important part of the discussion, but we know that it doesn't always blow a gale and it doesn't always, you know, have sunshine in this country, so you need to have backup. We're sitting on a huge amount of resources that could be fracked and used in a convincingly safe way. There's a huge amount of scaremongering around fracking, but actually there's not enough discussion about how it can be done safely. It seems to me like an absolute no-brainer that you would at least explore this avenue, so that because we know this energy crisis isn't just going to be solved next year. It's not like we're going to go, you know, even in 5 years that we're going to see normal prices again, unless we do something for the long term.
But are they weasel words? Because she's also said she will end the ban on fracking, but she won't go ahead with any fracking project unless there is consensus within the community. Well, there's not going to be, is there?
Well, this is the devil in the detail, because we know that huge amount of, particularly the Conservative Party voter base, does tend to be extremely NIMBY-ish when it comes to building infrastructure or housing or things like that. And so we know that people living in and around sites that are near proposed fracking sites are very reluctant to go ahead with that. And as much as I think that's, a discussion, I think the kind of greater good of energy provision for the nation has to overcome that.
Well, apparently one way around it might be promising the local community that their energy will be cheaper.
Yeah, well, that would probably
bribery,
work.
But it might work.
It might
yes.
work.
Yeah.
OK, Ella, Benjamin, thank you both very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on, but it's time at 10 to 7 for On Your Doorstep.
Yes, and our reporter Doogie Beattie is in Northern Ireland this morning. Doogie, where are you exactly? Oh.
Well, good morning and welcome to County Antrim. I am in one of Europe's largest inland freshwater lochs, and it is the largest in Britain. And joining me is Jerry Darby. He is one of the men that control this loch and look to try and, I suppose, bring revenue to it. Jerry, tell us a little bit about this sculpture that's behind us.
Well, this is a new sculpture we've just brought, Dougie, to the shores of the loch. It's obviously Finn McCool, and that's the loch itself at the top there. That's about to be thrown into the middle of the Irish Sea to create the Isle of Man. So it's part of the myths and legends of Lough Neagh, of which there's many more as well.
Well, there's many legends around Lough Neagh, but do tell us, what sort of innovation have we got here? What's going on in this loch at the minute?
There's a hell of a lot going on at this present moment in time. If we just see over here behind us here, we'll have the new Gateway Centre built by the local council, Antrim and Newton Abbey. So that's put a lot of money and a lot of investment into creating a new tourism centre, a new restaurant, and getting people down to the shores. Over on the other side is Ballyronan's had a big £2 million investment as well. And then down on the shores is the biggest marina on the loch, which is down at Oxford Island. So a lot of things happening, a lot of money going in, councils focusing on this, probably the most underutilised water resource in the whole of Great Britain and the whole of Ireland.
There's a lot of eels and so forth that are being sold here. I mean, I know that in around Brexit they are suffering a little bit. I mean, how are farmers coping with what's going on in and around Brexit and the shores of this loch? I mean, what are you doing to support them, if anything?
It's a very good question. So it's about £11 million of investment has been brought in by the Lough Neagh Partnership to farmers on the shores of the loch. And everybody's getting geared up for the consequences of Brexit, as you say, and also climate change and carbon change. So that money is trying to encourage farmers to move away from old traditional practices to maybe more carbon friendly and environmental.
Oh, it's very active, carbon friendly. I mean, are there many sort of fuel policies going on here? Much anaerobic digesters or anything else in Lough Neagh?
There's a couple of things like that around the shore, but the big thing mainly focusing in on is really just practice. Lough Neagh's famous and has its designations for birds primarily. We're going to see the torpedo platform later on, and birds are breeding obviously early in the season, and it's just encouraging farmers and getting farmers one simple thing: not to let their cattle in when the birds are breeding. It's just a simple thing, and if you do that, encourage them, give a bit of money for them to do that, maybe hold on back before the cattle are put on, you'd be surprised at the amount of birds, and wetland birds in particular. We're in a massive wetland here, and the results of that have been pretty significant so far.
Well, I can see behind us here, and we don't really want to. There's a lot of people going in swimming this morning.
Yes, indeed.
Does much of that go on?
Yeah, you've got the whole sort of COVID's done funny things to people as well, you know, and here and over in Ballyronan, there was thousands and thousands and thousands of people came down here, and I think what happened is people just reconnected with what's on their own doorstep. So instead of throwing £26 to get a cheap flight to Mallorca, people went, oh, I actually can go down to Lough Neagh, and once they were down, they went, all right, maybe I could go for a swim. So you've seen over the last 2 years the positive side of COVID, if there is any, that people have got more and more connected in the water and on the shores of the loch.
Well, we'll be back later on. We will be on the loch to look at a very old site indeed, but I will definitely not be going in for a swim, or hope not anyway.
Oh, go on, get yourself in there, do you?
Oh, no.
Thanks very much indeed.
Exactly.
Cool. I can't imagine.
Bit cold to go swimming there at the moment, I think.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that in your shorts.
I was talking about how to save energy around the house and whether, because of all the cost of living crisis and everything, you're worried enough to actually change your habits in the house. And I was talking about how I used to leave a light on for the dog when I came out in the dark, and I didn't. I left her in the dark this morning. Linda says, Anne, you can get a plug-in nightlight for your dog. I have one. It's pink for my lovely spaniel, Dolly. I bought an electric throw for the winter. I'm a pensioner and I won't be able to put the heating on so I can stay warm with my throw.
Ken says, we don't put our lights on till late as possible now. Probably cheaper to eat out at Wetherspoons than using the oven. We haven't used the oven for a few months. We're on a fixed deal till June, but we're trying to build up as much credit as possible to cover us for winter 2023.
Yeah, you see, you're already thinking about it.
Not a bad idea.
Do stay with us. There's lots more to come, including, as promised, the announcement of that latest energy price cap very soon now.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter. Some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales and the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers start to drift northeastwards. They tend to ease, but a few of them will keep going. And then a lot of cloud in this zone from eastern Scotland into parts of northern and central England. Where we've got the cloud, temperatures staying up in the double figures, but actually where we've got some clear spells, cool night to come, especially for northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, 5 to 9 Celsius in places here. But that's where the best of the sunshine will be first thing this weekend. Some cloud elsewhere across eastern Scotland into northern and central England. And where we've got that cloud, a few showers will get going by the afternoon. They'll be fairly well scattered, and away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells. And with light winds, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Temperatures up into the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north. Similar conditions prevail for Sunday and, of course, Bank Holiday Monday. Plenty of sunny spells and light winds. Feeling a bit cooler on the coast, and there'll be the odd shower inland, but otherwise plenty of warm sunshine.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A new energy price cap will be announced any moment now, and the forecast does not, I'm afraid, look good. We will do our best to explain what it means to you and what little things we could all be doing to reduce our bills.
Morning to you, it's 7 o'clock. It's Friday, the 26th of August. It's that bank holiday weekend again, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live, as you well know now, across the whole of the UK, on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you go, wherever you are, you can take us with you. So here are the top stories for you this morning.
Ofgem due to announce any moment now how much the energy price cap will be increased to, with millions of us facing hardship. Our reporters are at both ends of the country this morning to get your reaction to the energy hike.
A GB News People's poll finds that the majority of Brits would rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer now than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. Should this be a concern for the leadership hopefuls?
Plus, our Home and Security editor Mark White brings us a special report.
The decks of these border force vessels are packed with Channel migrants, 60% of them from one tiny nation, Albania. We report on the emergency deal to deport those with no right to be here.
And did you see the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, getting heckled outside a London hospital?
Jobs has protected. Are you going to do anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we are
12 years, you've done all about it. People have died and all you've done is nothing.
I wonder if you, like me, feel her frustration, because two of my family members were in a similar situation, kept waiting for hours for an ambulance, and instead, in the end, the ambulance service sent a taxi to collect them.
Let us know what you think. And as it is the bank holiday weekend, are you hoping to fly out of the country over the next few days? Well, it's not good news, I'm afraid. About 290,000 airline seats have been cancelled this weekend already. We'll see if the airports can cope with the reduced capacity.
And of course, as ever, we'd love your views on any of those things and more. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Talking about getting away, actually, Jackie's made a really good point. And it's those little things that you get used to saying and then you don't think about it. Morning to you, Jackie. She says, I'm going on holiday today with a tent and a dog. It's not a staycation, it's a holiday. Getting fed up with holiday meaning leaving the country.
You make a good point, actually, yeah. We tend to think now if you're going on holiday, you're going abroad. And if you're otherwise, it's a staycation. And that's really not the way it is. You can have a wonderful holiday wherever you go in the UK as well, can't you?
Yeah, I like that, Jackie. Next time I say staycation, I'll have to try and rein it back in.
I suppose it's a staycation if you were going to go abroad and you really wanted to go abroad, but instead you're having to pull back.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, frankly, prices are so weird at the moment that a lot of places to stay at in the UK are very, very expensive, and you can sort of get cheaper deals elsewhere if you can get a plane to fly on.
We were talking earlier on, because we've got our People's Poll we're going to be talking about a little bit later on this morning, which is not good news for the Conservative Party. Most people, according to this poll, wanting Keir Starmer, thinking Keir Starmer will be a better Prime Minister than either Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. And a lot of people getting in touch saying, well, it's the Conservatives' fault, they shouldn't have got rid of Boris. A lot of support for Boris out there. Rachel has been in touch and says, look, Boris did it for himself. He just wasn't capable of self-control. His downfall was inevitable when Cummings left. I've been quite impressed with Liz Truss, but no one will look good at the moment.
True. Anthony said, those voting age now, up to age 33, have never knowledgeably lived under a Labour government. So to them, why not vote Labour? They'll see the change as for the better. Those spineless Tory MPs who voted Boris out because they believed the main media hype, that's their fault. So I, for one, hope they all get voted out. Serve them right. Great to see you back, Mr. S.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Interesting, isn't it? So many different views. We've also had a special report from Mark White this morning about illegal migration. 60% of people coming in on small boats at the moment are from Albania. It's only got a population of 2.8 million people.
Won't take long at that rate to empty
it,
country.
no. And the Albanian government is concerned about that. Valerie says a government who cannot protect this country's borders from Albanian criminal gang members does not deserve to be in power. I've always voted Conservative, but never will again. I'm sick of all the soundbite hustings still going on while the country goes to the dogs.
Well, I suppose you can be forgiven for thinking the country is going to the dogs, because yet again we are now awaiting the latest announcement of the energy price cap, and it has just been announced. Millions of consumers right across the country are now going to find out what the new energy price cap's going to be. It's just been announced by Ofgem, as I said, and the industry regulator says the energy price cap will increase from the current £1,971, that's the current price cap, to £3,549 from October the 1st.
So that's a rise of about 80%. Yeah. Now, it relates to customers on standard tariffs. As we say, it comes into effect in October. Let's see how it's going to affect all parts of the country this morning. First and foremost, we'll talk to Davy Donaldson, who's in Glasgow for us. I mean, Davy, I know we were expecting it, but this is a huge jump.
This is an absolutely massive jump, and it's going to have huge, huge implications for people, not just across Scotland, but across the UK as a whole, because this is a monumental increase, 80%. Really, you're going to wonder if people are going to be sitting here watching this, listening to the news today, and really wondering how they're going to actually pay their bills, because people simply just can't afford to do that at the moment. It's very, very difficult. You know, the cost of living crisis we're having, this energy crisis is making it even worse. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, people. And you do wonder what kind of help is going to be made to people, especially on the lower incomes, who are really, really going to struggle even more than probably people on a better salary. So, yeah, you do wonder what's going to happen. I know that certainly here Scottish Power have come up with a plan to try and rectify the situation Their chief executive, Keith Anderson's come out and said, the price cap would be frozen for 2 years while wholesale gas prices are expected to rise. The difference between prices charged to consumers and the cost of supplying it would be £100 billion. The Scottish Power Boss's proposal would see this covered by UK government loan, which would then be repaid over 15 to 20 years. We've also heard from British Gas as well. They've said their plan is to donate 10% of its profits to help customers cope with soaring bills for the duration of the energy crisis. The firm, which has seen huge profits this year, said thousands of households will get grants of between £250 to £750, and I'm pretty sure that would be most welcome at the moment, given what we're seeing. This is an absolutely outrageous increase, and something really and clearly needs to be done about it.
Yeah, it does. OK, Davey, thank you.
So that rise, just in case you missed it, at the moment it's going up to £3,549 per year. That is the energy price cap, due from the 1st of October 2022, though Ofgem actually warn that the new price cap level will take effect from the 1st of October, but it is possible that some suppliers may begin increasing direct debits before this date in order to spread costs.
Oh, that's interesting. And bear in mind, of course, that isn't the maximum you can pay. That's just the average. So they don't cap your total bill. They cap the price of a unit, and that's how many. That's based on an average usage.
Jonathan Brearley, who's the CEO of Ofgem, says we know the massive impact this price cap increase will have on households across Britain and the difficult decisions consumers will now have to make. I talk to customers regularly and I know that today's news will be very worrying for many. The price of energy, he says, has reached record levels driven by an aggressive economic act by the Russian state. They have slowly and deliberately turned off the gas supplies to Europe, causing harm to our households, businesses and the wider economy.
Is that strictly true?
So that's what he is fairly and squarely blaming Russia.
Because because of Ukraine, there was an absolute move to stop using gas from
we
Russia.
understood that's what was happening.
Not them just turning it off. So it was,
that's Ofgem's statement, and they're not blaming anyone else. They are fairly and squarely laying it at Russia's door, and they say Ofgem has no choice but to reflect these cost increases in the price cap.
OK, well, let's talk to the CEO of the Energy and Utilities Alliance, Mike Foster. Morning to you, Mike. I mean, this is an absolute sucker punch for millions of people across the UK.
Absolutely right, Stephen. And this is something that households are really going to worry about until the government decide exactly what type of support it's going to give. It needs a bazooka, not a pea shooter now. We can't just tinker at the edges. The sort of increase that we've seen, nearly £1,600 increase in a typical or average household bill is too much to bear. And it's not the consumer's fault. They have done nothing wrong. It's a global energy price crisis, and it requires government to step in and protect consumers. How they do it, that's up to them, but they need to act swiftly because people are going to be concerned. And as you've just said on your programme, energy suppliers are going to start sending out the direct debit letters and emails shortly saying how much people are going to have to pay extra in their monthly bills. So it's time for the government to act massively to help people.
Explain for us how the energy price cap works, who sets it, how do they reach a certain figure, and what does it actually mean? Because as Stephen was saying, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the maximum that you'll have to pay. It's an average maximum, if you like.
Absolutely. They base it on the average amount of gas that you use as a customer and the average amount of electricity that a customer uses. And they then work out what the equivalent cost per unit is. As Stephen quite rightly said, it's not a cap on how much you pay, it's a cap on how much a single unit of gas and a single kilowatt of electricity is. So the existing cap is about 7 pence for every unit of gas. It looks like that's probably going to go up to about 15p. I can look at the details as soon as I finish the interview, but it looks like it's gone up to about 15p. And for electricity, it's currently about 27 pence, and I suspect it's probably gone up closer to 55, 54 pence a kilowatt of electricity. So that's what's capped, not the overall size of your bill. You use more gas and electricity than average, you will pay more than that £3,549.
So that then boils down to everyone else having to, all of us having to do what we can in the immediate term to reduce our usage. Well, look, a lot of people are doing that already. In some respects, it's pretty limited what we can actually do, isn't it? For most of us, at least.
Absolutely. In the short term, people have made those changes already. They've checked out their boiler, had it serviced. They've got their insulation sorted out. They've adjusted the flow temperatures to make the boiler run as efficiently as possible. So in the short term, this is where people are looking to government for direct support, for in effect a cash bailout. In the longer term, we need to wean ourselves away from natural gas. So for heating our homes, we're talking about switching to hydrogen and doing it more quickly than perhaps the government had first thought, so that we are no longer held to ransom by people like President Putin.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd say everyone's been a rock and a hard place, aren't they?
The CEO of Ofgem has fairly and squarely blamed Russia for this. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely central to the whole energy crisis is the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the impact that has had on gas prices. There are other factors as well. We've come out of COVID and economies had started to grow, and so the demand for energy increased, and that forces prices up too. Countries are switching from using coal to gas to give a cleaner environment and to hit their climate change targets. So that's again put the demand for gas up, and therefore its price has gone up. And then, yes, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has meant that there's a kickback, if you like, from Russia in terms of limiting the gas supply to Europe. And many countries in Europe are absolutely dependent upon Russian gas. The UK less so, but countries like Austria and Germany absolutely dependent. And so they're buying gas from other places that would normally come to the rest of Europe. And so again, that price is being forced up, and there's no end in sight, quite frankly. In 3 months' time, Ofgem will report again, and I suspect the price cap will go even higher.
I mean, it beggars belief, doesn't it, when you look at what governments have done? I mean, ours included to an extent, but a lesser extent. But all these governments over the last few decades saying, yes, we're going to trust the majority of our energy security to Russia. I mean, Germany was just building another pipeline. I mean, it absolutely beggars belief that politicians have allowed this to happen, doesn't it?
I think certainly if you were looking at what happened in Germany and how they moved away from nuclear so quickly, that has come back to hurt them and frankly hurt them quite badly. In the UK, because we are reliant upon this global price of gas, that's the impact that we're having. And for us, it's a signal, that we need to move away from natural gas and move quickly to a readily convertible system. So we move to using hydrogen in our gas pipelines to supply our gas boilers that go to 85% of homes in this country. The sooner we can make that switch, the better. But in the short term, we have to look to government to give us basically some cash to help consumers through these incredibly difficult times.
Can I just put one more point to you that's literally just come in from one of our lovely GB viewers? He says, Colin, he says, it seems to me that the price cap is only to protect the suppliers. It's a racketeering tool. Of course, if we don't use energy, then they get you on standing charges. It's disgraceful and cruel, and we don't get all our gas from Russia. In fact, about 3%, which is minuscule. It's racketeering, plain and simple. What would you say to Colin?
Well, Colin, what I would say is the price cap is there to help consumers. That's the important thing to it. It puts a limit on how much you pay for each unit of gas or electricity that you use. Without the price cap, we would be facing far higher prices than we're currently doing, because companies would have looked ahead, seen what is happening in the energy markets, in the future energy markets, and would be putting up their direct debits even higher than would exist without the price cap. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's the best consumer protection that is available at the moment.
But are the energy companies still making massive profits here?
With the price cap, the energy suppliers, the retailers, if you like, the people that you and I buy our gas and electricity from, their profit margins are going to be restricted. And many of them have gone bust because they've not been making money at the moment. The people who are making the big profits, the super profits, if you like, in an abnormal market, are those people who are producing the energy. So we're looking at people who are generating the electricity, people who are extracting the gas from, say, the North Sea. Those are the people who are using the current global market price to make super profits. And that's why they are a target by some for looking at, windfall type taxes on those super profits that have been made.
OK, Mike Foster, really good to talk to you this
Yes.
morning. Thank you. So, as Anne was saying, loads of you getting in touch on this instantly. Mike says not every household is on gas and electric. Of course, some people on electric only. Instead of the average price cap, give us a maximum price per unit. I need to know the price per kilowatt hour, which is something I can control my use of. I haven't got that exactly to hand.
No,
but
we'll try and get more detail.
It was 27p. It's going up by about 80%. So that would give you 48 pence or thereabouts per kilowatt hour. So it's a huge jump.
John says, with the new price increase, I'm not going to be able to afford any longer to run my mobility car. I'm disabled with severe arthritis. I'll now have to park my car up, but Motability will still take my monthly benefit because I'm in a 3-year contract with them. And I'll now lose £280 a month for the car that I won't be able to run. And even then, I'll not be able to afford to have my heating on to help with my arthritis. Plus, I have a son who's disabled and won't be able to have the washing machine and dryer on as I do right now for his disabilities.
Yeah, Tony says, so another rise for us, that's an extra £90 a month. So no more holidays abroad, no more pub visits or eating out. It's bonkers. And Greg, now this isn't... I've heard more and more of this, and I don't know, Greg, how it's going to work. I don't know what sort of trouble you could land yourself in. He says, I'm not worried about the energy price cap. I've already set it to what I usually pay. If they don't like it, tough.
You know, there's a growing movement not called can't pay, it's called won't pay. And that there are a number of people saying, well, I just won't pay. What's going to happen then?
Can't cut everybody off, which is all well and good if you pay monthly. If you, of course, the lowest paid people are often on energy meters, prepaid meters.
Yes,
They can't.
They can't
do that because then they just run out of energy. So, look, the Chancellor, Nadeem Sahawi, has made just a comment about this in the last few minutes. She's acknowledged the energy price cap rise will cause stress and anxiety for many people, but insisted government help is coming.
Liz Truss, on the other hand, did say, didn't she, at the very start of her leadership campaign, that she wouldn't be giving handouts, as she called it. She was going to try and solve, or at least address, the cost of living crisis through tax cuts. And now, apparently, she has changed her mind, and she is saying that she will help out with so-called handouts. But we don't know how much, how they'll be done, whether it'll go to everybody or it'll be means-tested in some way. Don't know yet, but we do need to know quick.
Well, Mike Foster was saying there needs to be some sort of bazooka to it all. But even he said, I don't know what that would be. I mean, the problem is it's going to cost billions. But what do you do when people are simply going to be unable to pay it?
Kenneth says,
do you do?
This is scary, the 80% rise in the energy price cap. I find it shocking that the head of Ofgem is blaming Russia. This is all primarily down to the zero-carbon green energy push, all thrust upon us by the World Economic Forum, yet we rarely see this mentioned. Well, we've just mentioned YouView.
Yeah.
It's not forward thinking, though, is it?
I think, Kenneth, that you've got a point that it does add to it, but it's not. I don't think it's the primary. I don't think it's the primary cause. I think you've got to say, haven't you, that it's the whole market value system and the fact that gas has become more difficult to get hold of, and therefore the prices are going up as a result.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know a lot of people aren't big fans of the zero carbon thing, and perhaps now is not the time to.
But if we keep saying now is not the time, we'll never address global warming and all those problems, will we?
True.
I mean, we've said now is not the time for years and years and years.
The advantages to green energy, of course, is its energy security.
Yes.
I mean, whether there's all these arguments as to whether it would be that much cheaper or not or whatever, but
if you're making
by the by,
it
we'll be making it ourselves.
Yes, and certainly Liz Truss's narrative on this, she's sort of only just changed to it, but she is saying that she wants to make Britain an energy-independent dynamo, which is why she has lifting the ban on fracking. And obviously, there's a greater look now at nuclear energy.
We need to look at nuclear again. Absolutely
really
need to look.
Never thought I'd ever hear myself saying that. I've never liked the idea of nuclear power, but clearly we've got to find something quick in the short term as well as looking long term.
See, I don't mind nuclear, but then I grew up near Sellafield.
Yeah, but also nuclear reactors are very different now, aren't they? They're made by Rolls-Royce now.
Are
and they're small. Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
There you go.
I know, things have changed.
Going on
changed.
despite the fact we're being yelled at to move on, I went on a school trip when I was about 13 or 14, up to Sellafield, and there's one point, you get your little nuclear radiation badges on and things. They say, oh, you're now walking on top of the nuclear rods.
Oh, charming.
It's hilarious.
Just don't watch Chernobyl,
the
movie, while you're going there.
Lordy.
But things have moved on. The technology is entirely different, I am told. Maybe we'll find out more about that.
But they take 10, 15 years to build.
Yes.
It's a long time. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. And about this as well, because this all adds to what's going on, obviously, in the world of politics. And have the wheels actually come off for the Conservative Party?
Yes, well, that's a question asked by the GBNews People's Poll. And it finds the majority of Brits would prefer a Labour government with Keir Starmer at the helm rather than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak.
Well, it comes as Labour holds a 14-point lead over the Tories.
The findings, conducted by People Polling, also discovered that the word that springs to mind the most about the front-runner in the Tory leadership, Liz Truss, is untrustworthy.
Well, earlier we spoke to Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, Matthew Goodwin, who talked us through the findings and what it really could mean for the Conservative
Wheels are coming off. A 14-point lead for the Labour Party is essentially a Labour majority, were that to be replicated at the next general election. And, you know, reminding ourselves, the Conservatives took a huge gamble by deciding to get rid of Boris Johnson and elect somebody new. What we can see in these numbers is that actually a lot of people now have tuned out. They're not lining up behind the Conservatives. Keir Starmer and Labour are comfortably ahead in the polls. And this really is going to pile pressure on whoever becomes the next leader of the party and whoever becomes the next Prime Minister. There is a risk here, clearly in these numbers, that if things don't change, the Conservatives are looking at a sort of 1997-2001 scenario where they not only lose that all-important red wall in Northern England, but they also lose a large chunk of that blue wall across the south, and that would be a nightmare scenario for the party.
So that, I mean, this is a clear case, is it, of the government losing an election, as it were, rather than the opposition winning one? And is that down, I mean, do you think that is down to all this hoo-ha and this very long, it seems like a very long leadership battle between these two people that is just turning people off?
Well, I think you just saw what's playing out in the clip that you just showed and what Anne was mentioning about the problems your friends and relatives have been having just trying to get an ambulance. I think the problem facing the Conservative Party at the moment is that it simply looks adrift from the problems that are facing the rest of the country. And when a political party or a governing party is seen to be on its own side and not on the side of the people, things start to fall apart very quickly. So, you know, if I were sort of in Team Truss or in Team Sunak or whoever ends up running number 10 from September 5th, the first priority is, I think, they've got to re-establish a relationship with the country as quickly as possible, which is holding their hands up and say, you know, this hasn't been a great summer for the Conservative Party. The government's made a lot of mistakes. But here's a plan for the winter. Here's a plan for how we're actually going to get through the most difficult period in 50 years.
And Liz Truss herself, who is guaranteed, or they say guaranteed to get it, certainly the front runner by the sound of it, she doesn't do very well herself up against, in your poll, up against Keir Starmer, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. So if you ask voters, would you rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer or a Conservative government under Liz Truss? Keir Starmer currently wins hands down, not even close. If you then say to voters, what do you think about Liz Truss? Just tell me one word. What comes to mind? We're not, putting words in voters' mouths. We're saying, give us a word. And the dominant theme is untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Because why would people necessarily say that? I mean, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know enough about her to say whether she's trustworthy or not.
So that is a very valid point, but here's what I think is going on. The Conservative brand has become so tarnished over the last few months that actually it's infecting everybody within that party. And if Liz Truss becomes the next Prime Minister, the immediate priority for her team will be to draw a line between the last administration and her administration, because that legacy, the chaos, the turmoil, the division, is already clearly damaging her brand in the eyes of many voters.
Do you think part of the problem has been, during this leadership election, that both candidates they're addressing the Tory faithful because they're the only people with a vote on this? They're not actually saying the things that rather might be more popular for a general election, appealing to the masses of people.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think if you ask people what are the top issues in the country, they say, I want to talk about the cost of living, I want to talk about ambulances, GPs, public services, but I also want to talk to some extent about things like migration, but they also want to talk about things that the candidates haven't really gone anywhere near. It isn't just the Channel crossings. They want to talk about the level of overall migration in the country, which in the eyes of many people is still too high. And that conversation hasn't really been taking place. So there's the broader problem here facing the party, I think, is it's got to come out of the gates with a compelling, big, bold idea about what it's going to do over the next, not just 1 or 2 years, but over the next 4, 5, 6 years. What's the big plan for getting us through this cost of living crisis?
Well, there is lots more to come here on Breakfast this morning. And following on from the tragic death of young Olivia Pratt-Corbell, her family spoke out for the first time yesterday. We're going to be crossing live to Liverpool, where our reporter is waiting with the very latest.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, mate.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
7:32. Morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, Merseyside police are continuing the hunt for the killer of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell and are now looking at feuds between local gangs as part of their investigation. So for more, let's go to Knotty Ash in Liverpool with our North West reporter, Sophie Reaper. Hello, Sophie. So what is actually going on there at the moment? What's the latest?
Well, good morning to you both. Yesterday we heard from the family of Olivia Pratt-Corbell for the first time in an official capacity. They gave a heartfelt tribute to the 9-year-old and asked people to do the right thing. In their statement they said, "We as a family are heartbroken and have lost a huge part of our life. If anyone knows anything, now is the time to speak up. It's not about being a snitch or a grass, it's about finding out who took our baby away from us." Now, Merseyside police have said they will do what it takes to find Olivia's killer. They've said they will leave no stone unturned. And over the past few days, they've carried out a series of raids and made a series of arrests. And that's all part of a wider crackdown on serious crime in the region. They've also said they're going to be turning to the community, who they want to be their eyes and ears in this kind of situation. They say that the response so far has been significant, but they also say they know that someone out there has got the information that they need, and they're urging that person or people to come forward immediately. Now, of course, there are still murder investigations going on for all 3 of the people who've been killed by gun crime in Liverpool in the last week, and police say they're determined to find the killers of Sam Rimmer, Ashley Dale and, of course, Olivia Pratt-Corbell.
OK, Sophie, for now, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? It is so shocking, especially when you've been away and out the loop for a couple of weeks, to come back and see that sort of headline.
It's terrible.
You just think, what on earth is going on?
Their plea is all over the newspapers this morning. They're the front page lead of the Daily Mirror, who took our baby away from us, and the family pleading with whoever may be harbouring or protecting the assailant, saying, please come forward, do the decent thing. But is that going to happen if it does come down to a matter of feuding gangs in
This is the problem when it comes to that sort of gang warfare.
You can't see them
very difficult.
doing the great
right
thing and giving up one of their own, or somebody coming forward.
Because somebody more than one person will know. A whole group of people will know who's done this.
It may well be that the police actually suspect already themselves, who know already who may be responsible, but just can't get to them or at them or find out enough information. Because I presume if it's gang warfare, everybody will just shut down.
Yeah.
Nobody will cooperate with the police. But it's terrible that it took that life of that lovely little girl.
I know.
It's just appalling in her own home, just inside her own front door.
Crazy. Look, we've got much more to come for you, including talking to our roving reporter, Doogie Beattie. He's out and about in Northern Ireland today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me!
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
At 7:38, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, and if you're just joining us, it was announced just a few minutes ago that the energy price cap is to increase again from the current £1,971 a year to £3,549, and that will start on October the 1st. And you see from our radio listeners, we're showing a graphic that shows the increase over the past few months, including this massive jump announced this morning. And
October 2019, 1143, right through to October 2022, 3,549. That just shows it. That really graphically, if you're listening on the radio, find a television, look at it fast, because I can't tell you, that is quite shocking, isn't it?
John says people will have to cut down on their energy use. My neighbours complain about the cost, but they leave lights on in rooms they're not in all the time. At night, their house is lit up like a Christmas tree. People need to turn off unnecessary lights. That's from John, 27 Ashford Grove in Bromley. No, joking.
What?
I was just thinking in case his neighbours were watching.
Oh, I see. Bill says, I was as frugal as possible on my last quarterly gas bill, and I used only 5 gas units. We do have an electric shower, he says, so you're clean. But he said, I used only 5 gas units. My gas bill for that period worked out in total to £34.44 for the 5 units I used. That means that 1 unit of gas was £6.89. Wow. He said, it's great to see you both together on the programme again. But that's interesting, isn't it? You go into that sort of trouble. Now you know what you're paying per unit of gas, except that the price per unit will be going up.
Well, except that it's he's building in the standing charge with that.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder how long you've got that deal for.
Because the standing charge is ridiculous. Why is that going up? Don't know.
John says a price cap doesn't mean a cap on your total energy bill. It's a cap on how much the suppliers can charge for. Yeah. And another, Mark says, why is it called an energy price cap when it keeps going up?
Yeah.
Cap, is it?
Yeah. Well, of course, British Gas traditionally don't charge the full price cap. They're about several pounds under. I mean, not a huge amount, but slightly less. So could energy companies just charge us less? We'll just have to wait and see. Let's go through the papers for you this morning with Ella Whelan and Benjamin Butterworth. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning. Ella, let's start with The Guardian, should we? Teachers want special exam conditions for their students. Why?
Yes. Well, over the throughout post-pandemic and throughout the pandemic years, there's been a recognition that because children haven't been having the adequate amount of schooling, they haven't been in school, they haven't had the right amount of teaching as normal because of school closures, that there had to be something done to mitigate the prospect that you would have sort of years of failures when it came to GCSEs and A-levels.
So massage the results?
Well, that's one way of putting it. I mean, there's the kind of the measures that are put in place, as it's described, are things like giving the kids more choice over the content in exams, giving them some warnings of the topics, so rather than what we had to do, which is you just turn up in the hall and freak out when you see that it's that question that you were dreading, that they had more of a helping hand. But the news is that, and I was watching, videos on social media, people opening their results yesterday. It's a very emotional and lovely thing to watch. But in actual fact, the figures show that, number one, it's not as good as people thought it was going to be, GCSE results. And number two, that the discrepancy between results in London and results in, for example, Yorkshire is pretty wide. And so there is this suggestion that more needs to be done to help kids along the way because school closures were so damaging. And there's one thing that they mention here, just a kind of just throwaway comment in the front page of The Guardian where they say, but with the threat of further waves of infection over the winter, more disruptions could lie ahead. And it makes you want to scream because you think, how are we still considering school closures at this point? How are we still considering the prospect of keeping kids away from school when it has devastated a generation's learning?
You've got to say, though, that, all right, the results are down on the last couple of years, but they're still better than they were pre-pandemic.
Yeah, well, and the controversy of that is that there are several teachers who have been kind of commenting over the last few days, particularly in relation to A-levels and GCSE results, saying they're very proud of their students. The students have worked incredibly hard, and teachers have as well. But there's a slight disingenuity to all of this, which is that we know that because kids haven't had the kind of rigorous schooling and indeed the kind of rigorous examinations as previously, that those opening their results, it's not the same as opening your results in 2019, because you know that there's been a level of massaging going on in relation to those figures, and so that can't continue to happen either. You have to bring, people are very anti-exam because they think it causes anxiety and stress and all the rest of that, which in some cases might be true, but returning to a kind of normal, challenging school environment is what kids really need.
Yeah, as soon as possible too. However, on a happy note, it is a bank holiday. We can all get away to the coast or whatever to go and visit family and friends, except that on Avanti West Coast, that won't be possible.
Well, it won't be possible, or at least you can't plan it. So Avanti, which runs from London to Glasgow, Manchester, Liverpool, some of the biggest cities in the country. So today's Friday, the bank holiday weekend has begun, and still half of the schedule, half of the tickets for this bank holiday weekend are not available. So you can't get tickets for Sunday or Monday, and they won't be available till later on today. And I think, this is pretty incredible. And actually, I wrote this story for today's Eye newspaper, and that may be because I'm getting a train to Manchester in a few hours, so I'm directly affected by this. But the idea that, Avanti got a £17 million bonus from the government, £4 million for its bosses just a month or so ago. What? Meanwhile, they can't even publish a schedule 48 hours in advance. And let me tell you, what they're telling customers to do, because you can't buy a return ticket if you're going out on Friday and coming back on Monday, as lots of people will be today. You can't buy a return ticket because they haven't put the timetable up. So they're telling people to buy 2 single tickets.
Which cost you basically twice as much.
Precisely. So for my trip to Manchester, instead of it costing £80 return, which is already pretty steep in my view, it will cost £134. I said to Avanti, who make millions of pounds in profit, will customers be able to claim back the difference because they're having to buy 2 tickets because you didn't bother to arrange the schedule? They wouldn't answer the question after being asked 3 times. I think stuff like this, when people have their bills going through the roofs, when companies making genuinely vast profits can't even do the job.
Bonuses.
Precisely.
And they're not running the place properly.
Precisely. But Avanti's contract to run the West Coast is up for renewal in October. So
is it?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
They've only just got it.
Yeah, well, I think it's 2016 or something now. They took it from Virgin Trains. Well, let's hope that the government really gives them a tough time on whether they get that back again.
Do you have any confidence that the government would give them a tough time or just hand them out?
Do you know what?
Bonus?
I actually fear that because they got the bonus only this summer, and Labour and Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, have been quite harsh on this, and basically all the cities along there are Labour run. And the government's line has been to sort of say, oh, it's the unions, Labour's playing politics, and maybe there's a certain level of that, but I fear that they're going to keep them there because it's become a party political thing rather than people trying to get on with their damn lives.
Yeah, well, maybe. Ella, to the Daily Express, half of shoppers are threatening to boycott online retailers. I bet they don't all do it.
No.
But why? Why are they upset?
Well, if you are, even now, we've got depressing news with the energy price cap, it's unlikely that lots of people are going to be going out and buying loads of clothes online. But if you are, previously, some of the big companies like Boohoo have allowed you to send back things for free. And so then people would buy a shed load, try it on, send it back. And that is coming to an end. So, for example, Boohoo now charges £1.99. Zara and others are charging for returns. And a relatively small survey done of 2,000 or so people showed that if those prices for returns came in, then they wouldn't shop with those outlets anymore. Which, there's the funny thing about this is that so much of it has, particularly in relation to Boohoo. Boohoo faced a huge amount of criticism for fast fashion, environmental kind of reasons, and were pressured to say that they would include prices on returns to stop people from doing that kind of wasteful thing of buying 50 things and sending 45 of them back. But it's one of those things that makes you ask questions about the sustainability of online shopping. For so long, it's been that the trajectory has been high streets dying, everything's happening online. But in actual fact, if you have something like this which makes online shopping that little bit more difficult, and you've actually come to terms with the fact that it'll probably cost you, or maybe it won't actually, given what you've just been talking about with Avanti, but then it might cost you a little bit less to get on the bus or the train and go into the high street and try it on.
Go back into real shops again.
We might actually go back into, which I think a lot of people would probably celebrate, because, you know, the joy of actually going in and shopping and the health of the high street
joy
and all of that.
The joy of shopping.
That shows how I spend my time, because I love shopping. But I think that's.
But if you're
probably
trying
quite
to send
important
something
people.
back, it may well be that Royal Mail are on strike anyway, and you won't be able to send it back.
Yeah, do you know, I'm so guilty of buying things on these websites because I think, I can just send it back if I don't like it or if it doesn't fit properly.
And do you always remember? Do you remember to send it
No,
back?
and then I've given them all the money in the first place.
I know.
So-
I do that all the time.
You're joking.
No. I order a load of stuff, have a lovely big try-on at home, and then forget to send the stuff that I don't want back.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'd never do that. Never do that. I'm a tight northerner.
But I think it's quite
Never do that.
I do as well, and actually, I think that's why it's totally false economy for these businesses, because actually, I think people will spend far less money in the first place if they have to pay for the returns, and that obviously isn't going to do well for their profits. So, you know, I think they'd be stupid to charge for your returns.
Oh, well, we shall see.
You have to vote with your purse.
Yeah. Ella, Benjamin, thank you. We'll catch up with you both a little bit later on.
Now, GB News has learned that a massive 60% of those currently arriving across the channel in small boats are from Albania, which is a tiny nation of less than 3 million people.
Well, an emergency agreement between the UK and Albania will come into force next week, aiming to rapidly remove those Albanians who arrive by small boat and who the government believes have no right to be here.
As our Home and Security editor, Mark White, reports, those Albanians who enter the UK illegally could be on a deportation flight home within a few weeks of arrival here.
Arriving into Dover Harbour, the Border Force vessel Ranger, her decks packed with Channel migrants, most likely to be from Albania. In fact, we can confirm that 60% of those currently arriving into UK waters on small boats are from that tiny nation. In truth, this is a crisis within a crisis, which has so concerned UK authorities, it resulted in what amounts to an emergency agreement between the UK and Albanian governments to rapidly remove those with no right to asylum. The British government believes that's likely to be the vast majority of those arriving from what is a peaceful nation on the Balkan Peninsula. We've been told that 6 in 10 of those arriving on small boats at the moment are from Albania, more than 6,000 already this year and growing rapidly. Compare that to just 2 years ago, when only 50 Albanians arrived by small boat. Here in the Albanian capital, Tirana, this is also an existential crisis for those in government here, as the country faces rapid depopulation. Since the 90s, the population has fallen by more than 15% and now numbers fewer than 2.8 million people. The crisis is most acute in Albania's rural towns and villages, where the vast majority of their young have up sticks and left. In fact, Albania is one of the few nations in the world where there are more of its people living outside than inside the country. As part of the agreement with the UK, Albanian law enforcement officials will be seconded here to the Border Force processing centres at Dover Harbour and the former RAF base at Manston. We're told they'll help gather intelligence on arrivals and quickly assess those with no right to be here. Officials hope those individuals could be removed within 2 or 3 weeks of arriving. However, there's little doubt asylum lawyers will try to challenge those decisions. Nothing surrounding this growing crisis is ever straightforward. Mark White, GB News.
extraordinary situation we were thinking of earlier. That it's a small country of only 3 million occupants, and it's almost to the point now where there are more Albanians outside Albania than in it.
Crazy.
It is.
Wanting to come here in their droves, so it would seem. Don't know why. Anyway, let's change tack significantly for you this morning because it's time for On Your Doorstep.
And our reporter Doogie Beattie is in Northern Ireland this morning. Where is he now? Hi, Doogie.
Hi, well, hello. We're on a boat in the middle of Lough Neagh and we're looking at a very historical piece of wreckage, you may say, but there's a lot to it. And joining me now is Peter, who works for the Lough Neagh Partnership. Tell us a bit about this.
Okay, well, what you're looking at here is an old torpedo platform from Second World War. It's actually where they used to test torpedoes on the loch. The loch's very shallow because they could fire the torpedoes and then retrieve them. So this was a testing point for torpedoes in Lough Neagh. Lough Neagh is quite a big association with the Second World War. There was 3 airfields. A lot of American GIs came around here to train. But this building here is actually, as I say, a torpedo testing platform, and it's now been taken over by breeding birds, so it's a very important breeding site for black-headed gulls, common terns, and a roost site for cormorants and lesser blackbacks, that sort of thing.
I mean, what do these type of birds bring to the loch?
Well, the black-headed gulls are very important. It's a very important site in terms of Ireland. It's one of the main nesting sites. So they actually breed here. They're amber-listed species. The common terns come all the way from West Africa. So they fly all the way up through Africa and Europe to come to Antrim Bay to have their babies, I suppose.
And does it bring much tourism with it?
Well, it's more of a conservation project, but there's no doubt people locally in the marina, the torpedo platform's a landmark, it's a feature of interest, and people are interested in it. We have actually just recently done a live stream project on the platform, so we actually have a camera which follows the birds from finding their nest, laying their eggs, to fledgling birds, and you can follow that live 24/7 on the internet. So that's a way, one of the ways in which we try and highlight the loch and its conservation interest, and I suppose that is of interest to some visitors. Yeah.
It is amazing. Last week we were in a seal sanctuary, a hospital, and they too were putting little trackers and so forth on their animals and finding out where they appeared next. I mean, where do some of these birds appear? Do you know how far afield they go?
Oh, well, they can travel quite a distance to feed. I mean, terns on the eastern shore of Northern Ireland would even go in a day over to Scotland to feed. So they do travel in a wide area, but the reason they come to this loch is because it's just so much fish in the loch. Little roach, little pollen. They're an indigenous species to Lough Neagh, so there's lots and lots of fish, and that's what they're looking for. It's shallow water, there's fish, it's a predator-free site, so that's perfect for them. That's just paradise. This is the best place they could be to have their chicks, yeah.
Well, there you go, from the shoreline to swimmers to a torpedo site. We'll be back with the rescue that is on this loch just later on this morning.
Okay,
Right.
Doogie, thank you. So many of you getting in touch this morning. It's unbelievable. Paula says, hello to my 2 favourite presenters.
Oh.
That guarantees you a mention, Paula. Can someone please explain why prices didn't rise when the Ukraine was at war 10 years ago? I think we're paying for COVID illegals and all the money given away during COVID.
It's because we announced sanctions against Russia and they have responded.
Yeah, basically, when there was the Ukraine invasion 10 years ago, we ignored it.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
So
a lot of people might say, if only we'd done something then, I don't know. Yeah. Dennis says we've plenty of gas around in this country, so get drilling and fracking ASAP. And actually, that's interesting, because apparently there was a Tory leadership hustings last night in which an engineer stood up and said, there is enough energy under the ground now. If you just got on with the fracking, we could become energy secure now. And he said it to both of the contenders. So maybe that will change their mind. Maybe that's why Liz Truss has announced that she will, if she becomes Prime Minister, lift the ban on fracking.
There is concern with fracking, though, about these sort of tremors that it produces. I mean, I don't know enough about it, really, but I know not everyone's happy. Jamie says, as a pensioner on £185 a week, my electricity bill will now be £100 a week without me putting the heating on. I'm thinking of being a criminal. Can't be a migrant, but it's got to be better in jail.
Yeah, it's a sad situation when anyone even thinks about that.
Yeah.
Jeff says, my wife and I are on state pensions with 2 very small private pensions. We are 75, and with the loss of my son and his wife, we are bringing up our grandsons, who are now 14 and 11. How do they think we're coping? Life is hard enough as it is.
Peter says, he says the 14-point lead for Labour, which we're seeing in our People's Poll, will last as long as a chocolate teapot. Starmer's solution to the energy problem is so cynical and middle-income earners would not be helped at all. Labour would start to water down Brexit, and with Sturgeon's help, it would be horrific. This is a reaction to the leadership contest, not support for Starmer.
That's a very interesting point. I think the leadership contest is beginning to turn a lot of people off.
Yeah, keep your thoughts coming through, gbviews at gbnews.uk. And coming up, we'll tell you about the People's Poll. We ask for your thoughts and opinions on the Conservative leadership race and the Labour Party.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A new energy price cap has been announced this morning, and it's not good news. It's going to increase to more than £3,500 a year from October.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 26th of August. It's a bank holiday weekend ahead, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're online, on your radio, on your TV, so wherever you are and whatever you're up to, you can take us with you. These are your top stories.
Ofgem have said that the energy price cap will jump to £3,549 from the current £1,971. This will come into effect from the 1st of October. Do let us know how you feel about this. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
A GB News People's Poll finds a majority of Brits would rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. How much of a concern is this, do you think, for the leadership hopefuls?
Our Home and Security Editor Mark White brings us a special report.
The decks of these border force vessels are packed with channel migrants, 60% of them from one tiny nation, Albania. We report on the emergency deal to deport those with no right to be here.
And did you see the Health Secretary, that's Steve Barclay at the moment, getting heckled outside a London hospital?
Jobs has protected. Are you going to do anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we
12 years, you've done all about it. People have died, and all you've done is nothing.
How many of us are thinking, seeing that and actually agreeing with her? And maybe, I tell you, the impressive thing was that she knew who he was.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were just walking along the street and you saw somebody being interviewed, I don't think at the moment you'd necessarily know that they were Steve Barclay and he was responsible. But
No.
she took him on, and I don't blame her because 2 of my own family members have been kept waiting hours for an ambulance just in the last few days. And instead, in the end, the ambulance service, 999, said, look, we can't even give you an estimate of when an ambulance will be able to get to you. So instead, we're going to send you a taxi. That happened just in my family, just in the last few days. I'll bet you've got a very, very similar story. Do get in touch.
Yeah, you can do so by emailing us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We talk about the cost of living crisis and the price cap, which we're going to tell you about in just a moment, which has gone up by about 80%. So that's the announcement. It'll kick off in October.
Yes, but there is warning that your supplier could adjust your direct debit now in order to spread the cost.
Jeff has been in touch and said, my wife and I are on state pensions with 2 small private pensions.
No, I just read that one out.
Did you? 75?
Just shows he doesn't listen to a word I say.
Did you?
Yeah. But 2 seconds ago. Well, 2 minutes ago.
Did you?
Yeah. See? Men don't listen, do they? Doesn't it drive you nuts?
Sorry, what were you saying? I didn't hear you do that one.
All right, well, what about this one? Maybe you
on,
read this one out and I didn't listen to you. Barry says, great show this morning. Can I just say, why can't Rishi Sunak help the country out and take himself out of the running for Prime Minister, get together with Liz Truss and work alongside her to get this country out of the mess? He's been a great Chancellor. Work with Liz and let's get this country back on track. Stop all these hustings. We've a lot more serious problems to get resolved now rather than all the bickering back and forth. 2 great Conservative politicians who, working together, could help get us out of this hole.
Yeah, maybe. I don't
He
know.
wants to give up, but don't you think maybe that would be a good idea?
He must be very demoralised at the moment, I think. Interesting, I see William's been in touch. Morning, William. Why is my electricity going up? I'm with Outfox. Not heard of them, but there you go. They totally use wind farms. It's a rip-off. Last month it was reported we only use 3% of gas from Russia. We'll never vote again.
What, not for anybody?
But yeah, if you're using purely green energy, why are your bills going up? I don't know. There's got to be an answer. Market economy or whatever. But it shouldn't be going up that much.
No, it shouldn't be, should it? That's a really interesting one.
Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through, and particularly on this, because this morning millions of us are finding out what our new energy price cap is, and that figure was announced in the last hour.
Now, the industry regulator, Ofgem, says the energy price cap's going to increase from the current £1,971 to £3,549. And that price relates to customers on standard tariffs and will come into effect on the 1st of October.
Well, I mean, it's just horrific, isn't it? I mean, let's see what's happening up and down the country. We'll kick off in Glasgow for you and our reporter, Davy Donaldson. I mean, this is just crippling, Davy.
Yeah, absolutely horrendous. You know, I'm outside Scottish Power here in Glasgow. Delighted to say I'm joined by Kate Cunningham from Energy Advice Scotland. What's your reaction to the news?
Sadly, we were expecting this, but nonetheless, it's absolutely devastating for households. It'll be over 1 million households in Scotland now that are pushed into fuel poverty, and frankly, you know, we're going to be looking at hundreds of thousands of people whose health and well-being are going to be compromised to the point of lives being threatened.
The worst of it is, as well, is, you know, what can be done?
We need government intervention, we need targeted intervention as a matter of urgency. This isn't a time to be talking about what we might do and what we COVID showed us that we can legislate overnight, and we need to do that now. We need to be really focused on the people who are most in need, and to protect them, actually, to protect their well-being and to protect those households who otherwise are going to immediately ricochet into the NHS because they simply don't have enough money coming in to cover anything like the bills they're going to be receiving.
You're talking about protecting people, but it sounds very much like the situation's going to get a lot worse.
The situation is going to get worse. I think that people need to understand, unfortunately, that the price cap doesn't mean that this is the maximum that they will pay, that will be proportionate to the bills that they pay anyway. So some households will pay an awful lot more than this, but also that the price cap will go up again. And we are stuck in this situation for the foreseeable future. So this isn't trying to get through this winter and how will we budget in the short term. Longer term intervention is needed to help people understand how they will manage for months and years ahead.
And it's not just people, it's businesses as well, because I know cafe owners I've spoken to as well, up to £4,000 a month in bills, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely, because businesses are not capped, they're not protected by this, so they're just seeing their bills increase. And those costs also are pushed onto consumers, so people who are hard-pressed anyway are going to see everything rise round about them.
Thank you, Kate. There we go. Kate Curran from Energy Advice Scotland talking to us about the rise in the price energy cap there. So, yeah, bad news all round, and it sounds like it's going to get a lot worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, it could well do. Davey, thank you. Sue says, we've been warned, but to actually hear that it's happening soon is frightening, and that's an average. It's going to get frightening if we get a cold winter. I'm shocked this is totally down to the Russians turning it off. Well, that's what the boss of Ofgem is saying. But what is annoying is that the profits these suppliers are still getting, I'm stuck on a standard tariff. It depends who you talk to, because a lot of these energy suppliers that we all have to use say they don't make a lot of profit. The big profits are being made by the energy producers. Now, they're making a lot of profit because it's not costing them any more to produce it. But, of course, the market value has gone up. But, of course, what's the big one? Centrica actually owns British Gas, so it's effectively the same company.
Yeah, and even though we, as a country, don't rely on Russian gas as nearly as much as any of the other countries, the sheer fact that they do, and so they're having to buy elsewhere, pushes the price up. And that's market forces for you, which is why, in the end, we all suffer, I guess.
Justin says the government should now cancel the HS2 scheme, which is predicted to cost in excess of £100 billion, and plough this money into helping people get through the cost of living crisis.
They've already spent so much. Wouldn't that now become a huge waste to just write it off?
And I do sort of think you've got to invest in the future of the country. But, I mean, I know what you mean. It's like they're going to have to throw so much money at. Maybe you have to pause something like HS2. Mind you, that would put a lot of people out of work. Oh,
and if you live in an area where fracking has been mooted or even started and then suspended, how do you feel about the fact that now clearly everybody is beginning to rethink fracking and it may go ahead again? And how do you feel if you live anywhere close to a fracking area? Love to hear your views. Lots of people have different views on that one, and it is mooted that apparently Liz Truss says that she's going to lift the ban on fracking and that no fracking project will go ahead unless there is consensus amongst the community in that area. How is there ever going to be consensus? Because there will always be people who are violently against fracking and others who say it's the only way forward at the moment.
I only know of one site, and that's in Blackpool. So if you're a Sangronian...
Sangronian?
Yeah, it's people from Blackpool.
Sangronians? Why?
I don't know. Maybe it's because they're near the sand. I don't know. Sangronians.
Sangronians.
Yeah. So if you're a Sangronian, anywhere near that fracking site that was sort of started and then put on hold, would you support it? It'd be good for the economy. It'd bring jobs to the area.
And
Blackpool
quickly,
needs
apparently.
it.
It can be done fast, apparently. It's probably our fastest new form of energy because in many cases the infrastructure has been started already. So it could make us more energy secure. But how do you feel if you live anywhere near it?
Yeah. Let us know, because it's that NIMBYism is a big thing, isn't it? And I can understand that to an extent. But, you know, at the moment, is it worth the risk? Worth the noise, the disruption? let us know. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories, and actually sort of back to the leadership race. And Rishi Sunak has vowed never to let political correctness get in the way of people's safety. He made the comments at a hustings last night, saying stop and search is a good example of a technique that works, that police forces are not always using for reasons that are not right.
And of course, that follows the latest poll by the research data platform Focal Data, which says almost half of Britons blame the government for failing to prepare for and prevent the current energy crisis. That's more than the 30% who blame energy firms for the rise in bills. 2/3 say they're very concerned about the rising cost of energy bills.
The cost of the UK's asylum system has topped £2 billion a year, the highest number of claims for 2 decades, and record delays, so people waiting for a decision is driving all of that. The Home Office says more than 63,000 applications were made in the year to June. These latest figures published as more migrants are brought ashore at Kent after crossing the Channel yesterday.
And the family of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot in her home in Liverpool, they're appealing for the public to do the right thing to help find the gunman. It's after police said they will not rest until they find who killed Olivia. Officers are urging the gunman to surrender.
Now, all this doom and gloom that we're talking about this morning, and there's an awful lot of it, does then point the finger, it's got to be said, at the government. I mean, that's always the way. Whoever's in charge, when things go wrong, the government gets blamed for a lot of it. But there's all of this completed by, topped off, if you like, by a leadership contest, sort of getting rid of Boris and a leadership contest. Does it all mean that the wheels have now come off the Conservative Party?
Well, a GBNews People's poll finds that the majority of Brits would prefer a Labour government now, with Keir Starmer at the helm, rather than a Conservative government under Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak.
Well, it comes as Labour currently hold a 14-point lead over the Tories.
The findings, conducted by People Polling, also discovered that the word that springs to mind quickest about the front-runner in the Tory leadership, Liz Truss, is untrustworthy.
Well, earlier in the programme, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, Matthew Goodwin, joined us to talk through these latest findings.
Wheels are coming off. A 14-point lead for the Labour Party is essentially a Labour majority, were that to be replicated at the next general election. And, you know, reminding ourselves, the Conservatives took a huge gamble by deciding to get rid of Boris Johnson and elect somebody new. What we can see in these numbers is that actually a lot of people now have tuned out. They're not lining up behind the Conservatives. Keir Starmer and Labour are comfortably ahead in the polls. And this really is going to pile pressure on whoever becomes the next leader of the party and whoever becomes the next Prime Minister. There is a risk here, clearly in these numbers, that if things don't change, the Conservatives are looking at a sort of 1997-2001 scenario where they not only lose that all-important red wall in Northern England, but they also lose a large chunk of that blue wall across the south, and that would be a nightmare scenario for the party.
So that, I mean, this is a clear case, is it, of the government losing an election, as it were, rather than the opposition winning one? And is that down, I mean, do you think that is down to all this hoo-ha and this very long, it seems like a very long leadership battle between these two people that is just turning people off?
Well, I think you just saw what's playing out in the clip that you just showed and what Anne was mentioning about the problems your friends and relatives have been having just trying to get an ambulance. I think the problem facing the Conservative Party at the moment is that it simply looks adrift from the problems that are facing the rest of the country. And when a political party or a governing party is seen to be on its own side and not on the side of the people, things start to fall apart very quickly. So, you know, if I were sort of in Team Truss or in Team Sunak or whoever ends up running number 10 from September 5th, the first priority is, I think, they've got to re-establish a relationship with the country as quickly as possible, which is holding their hands up and say, you know, this hasn't been a great summer for the Conservative Party. The government's made a lot of mistakes. But here's a plan for the winter. Here's a plan for how we're actually going to get through the most difficult period in 50 years.
And Liz Truss herself, who is guaranteed, or they say guaranteed to get it, certainly the front runner by the sound of it, she doesn't do very well herself up against, in your poll, up against Keir Starmer, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. So if you ask voters, would you rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer or a Conservative government under Liz Truss? Keir Starmer currently wins hands down, not even close. If you then say to voters, what do you think about Liz Truss? Just tell me one word. What comes to mind? We're not, putting words in voters' mouths. We're saying, give us a word. And the dominant theme is untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Because why would people necessarily say that? I mean, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know enough about her to say whether she's trustworthy or not.
So that is a very valid point, but here's what I think is going on. The Conservative brand has become so tarnished over the last few months that actually it's infecting everybody within that party. And if Liz Truss becomes the next Prime Minister, the immediate priority for her team will be to draw a line between the last administration and her administration, because that legacy, the chaos, the turmoil, the division, is already clearly damaging her brand in the eyes of many voters.
Do you think part of the problem has been, during this leadership election, that both candidates they're addressing the Tory faithful because they're the only people with a vote on this? They're not actually saying the things that rather might be more popular for a general election, appealing to the masses of people.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think if you ask people what are the top issues in the country, they say, I want to talk about the cost of living, I want to talk about ambulances, GPs, public services, but I also want to talk to some extent about things like migration, but they also want to talk about things that the candidates haven't really gone anywhere near. It isn't just the Channel crossings. They want to talk about the level of overall migration in the country, which in the eyes of many people is still too high. And that conversation hasn't really been taking place. So there's the broader problem here facing the party, I think, is it's got to come out of the gates with a compelling, big, bold idea about what it's going to do over the next, not just 1 or 2 years, but over the next 4, 5, 6 years. What's the big plan for getting us through this cost of living crisis?
Yeah,
that's what we need.
Well, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We do need a big plan. Like the guy we were talking to about energy earlier on, saying, the government's got to fire a bazooka at the cost of living crisis, which means money. But we also hear talking about the NHS and the ambulance service, which looks like it needs money.
It does need money.
This is the problem. Everything needs money at the minute, and we haven't got a lot.
No, but we've got through crises before. I even think coming out of a war or something, you could have argued then that there just isn't enough money to rebuild. But governments can find money, and good economists can plan forward both long-term and short-term, surely.
You just reminded me of Phil, who got in touch earlier on this morning. And Phil said, can we not do a war or debt bond? We had one to pay for World War II. It took us until 2005 to pay for it, but why not?
Did it really take that long? My goodness. That's a war bond.
War bond. I have to say.
Well, it's like buying an ISA or something. You buy something. It doesn't do anything for you, but if you've got the money, you buy it. But it will then reap dividends for you later. But the point is, it's a way the government can actually lay their hands on cash quick.
Right. Well, they're going to need to come up with something,
interesting,
don't they?
isn't
it? Keep your thoughts coming through, because you're educating us all the way, which is what we love. Now to some obviously awful news, and Merseyside police are, of course, still searching for the killer of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, and they're now looking at feuds between local gangs as part of their investigation.
For more, let's go now live to Nottingham in Liverpool with our North West reporter, Sophie Reaper. Morning, Sophie. Tell us the very latest, and particularly the fact that the police now believe it's about gangs.
Yeah, very good morning to you both. Well, we heard from Olivia Pratt-Corbell's family for the first time in an official capacity yesterday when they put out a statement in tribute to the 9-year-old. They're asking people to do the right thing. They also said, we as a family are heartbroken and have lost a huge part of our life. If anyone knows anything, now is the time to speak up. It's not about being a snitch or a grass. It's about finding out who took our baby away from us. Now, Merseyside police have said they will do what it takes to find Olivia's killer and that they will leave no stone unturned. In the past few days, they've carried out a number of raids and arrests, and as you say, they now believe that it could be a gang involvement, and that's something that they are looking into. They're trying to clamp down. Obviously, we've seen 3 deaths in the past week as a result of gun crime, so they're really trying to clamp down on that. They say that they want no guns left on the streets of Liverpool. They're also said that they're turning to the community, to be their eyes and ears. They say that the response so far has been significant, but they know that there's someone out there who has the information that they need, and they're urging anyone who knows anything to come forward as soon as possible. Now, there are still 3 murder investigations ongoing for the deaths that have been carried out via guns in the last week alone in Liverpool, and police say they're determined to find the killers of Sam Rimmer, Ashley Dale, and of course 9-year-old schoolgirl Olivia Pratt-Corbell.
OK, Sophie, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Well, do stay with us. We've got lots more to come, including how long would you wait for an ambulance? It's not a joke. People are having to wait up for 40 hours in some cases. Stay with us to find out more.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter. Some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales in the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers start to drift northeastwards. They tend to ease, but a few of them will keep going. And then a lot of cloud in this zone from eastern Scotland into parts of northern and central England. Where we've got the cloud, temperatures staying up in the double figures, but actually where we've got some clear spells, cool night to come, especially for northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, 5 to 9 Celsius in places here. But that's where the best of the sunshine will be first thing this weekend. Some cloud elsewhere across eastern Scotland into northern and central England. And where we've got that cloud, a few showers will get going by the afternoon. They'll be fairly well scattered, and away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells. And with light winds, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Temperatures up into the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north. Similar conditions prevail for Sunday and, of course, Bank Holiday Monday. Plenty of sunny spells and light winds. Feeling a bit cooler on the coast, and there'll be the odd shower inland, but otherwise plenty of warm sunshine.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrar.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
"8:27, morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're online, we're on your TV, and we're on the radio.
Yeah, everywhere. And if you're just joining us, then it was announced just a short while ago that the energy price cap is going to increase from the current £1,971 to £3,549, and that will be from the 1st of October.
Yeah, we've got a graph to show you. If you're listening on the radio, you're probably as well not to see it, frankly. It shows the increases over the past few years, including the jump this morning. So from 2 years ago, October 2019, 1,143, to October 22, 3,549. It's grim. And it's going to get worse.
It's a heck of a jump, yeah. And Ofgem have warned that even though it says that it won't come into force until the 1st of October, some companies, some providers may well adjust your direct debit or standing order or whatever it is accordingly. Now, they might actually put the price up straight away in order to try and spread the cost for you.
Yeah, which is...
Or you could argue get their hands on your money sooner.
Yeah, but you know what? That might not be a bad thing.
No, it gets you used to it.
You'll be sort of... It takes it off the bill. I mean, I know it's... I'm trying to look at the positives. You're trying to see the positives. I'm trying to look at the positives in all of this. Meanwhile, in all of this, fuel prices, they are down slightly. But James says, been to 2 garages lately for petrol. I noticed when paying by card, the pump will no longer authorise payment unless you have £100 in your account. Mm. If you're struggling and you need to get to work, then this comes at a terrible time. I've not seen that. I have to be honest.
No, Des says, in the Daily Telegraph yesterday, there was a report that a gas tanker was arriving in Britain with a cargo worth £190 million. Of that, £150 million is going to be profit. Someone somewhere is making a lot of money. What on earth is going on?
Yeah, the supply. Well, not the suppliers, the energy
need to
producers.
Be double-checked, but yeah, that sounds terrible.
How much of that would be profit and how much tax and all the rest of it? But I mean...
Richard says the cost of getting the oil and gas out of the ground hasn't gone up, so the energy suppliers are using this gas shortage to massively increase consumer prices. If they had a social conscience at all, they would reduce the price so their profits are no more or less than last year.
Do you know what? Whereas I think that's a fair point, and I've mentioned this to guests in the past and energy experts in the past, I can't remember his name now, but what one expert said to us was, actually, what we don't care about is that these companies actually made losses a few years ago because prices were really low, so they were making quite big losses, so it's recouping that, which is...
Is that right? They actually made losses?
Apparently. So he was saying, so they're now recouping their money now, though it just seems really unfair.
But again, now's not the time.
It's market economy. It's all about... we support a market economy in this country. It's capitalism. It's what it's all about. Higher demand means higher prices. Well, we've lost some demand from Russia, some providing from Russia, and therefore demand goes up, prices go up. But it doesn't make it any easier to swallow.
It just seems there to be so many problems at the moment. It's not the right time, is it?
Now, to add to some issues, COVID, we haven't talked about that for a while. Routine COVID tests in hospitals across England are going to be scrapped next week, despite twice as many deaths from the virus in the UK this summer, apparently, compared to last year.
Well, the decision comes after cuts to COVID funding were imposed by Tory leadership contender Rishi Sunak during his time as Chancellor.
What does this mean, though, for patients and people with COVID symptoms? Let's talk to Dr. Amika Okorocha, who's in the studio this morning. Good to see you.
Hello.
Is this a sensible idea or not? Do we need to keep testing forever?
I think at the moment it is a sensible idea. I kind of understand where it's coming from, especially when you think of the vaccine rollout and the programme we have with that. we made sure that the people who needed the vaccines kind of got them first and have now developed antibodies. So we're hoping that even if they did test positive for COVID, it would be manageable in and out of a hospital setting. There are a number of resources that you have to think about when it goes to testing everybody in hospitals, including staff and patients for COVID, especially if they don't have symptoms, and exactly what you're going to do with that information in terms of isolating them. We are at a living with COVID type scheme now, where even if you have tested positive for COVID, the best we can do is try and get you a side room and exclude you from other patients who are immunocompromised or at risk.
I mean, you work in A&E.
Yeah.
If somebody manages to get an ambulance and gets to A&E,
yes.
Or is queuing at A&E, when do you test them?
So usually when they're coming in through the door.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so usually the triage nurses will test people, especially if they've been symptomatic for respiratory distress or cough or fever, they'll get tested immediately. And generally, so we identify them usually while they're in the department, and often it will come up on our screens, this patient's tested positive, and then it's about bed space.
Yes.
Who's been near that patient and how do we get them into a side room? Is there somebody who doesn't need a side room who could come out? And that's one of the big issues we have anyway in the hospital, especially in the department, getting beds.
What do we make of this figure saying twice as many deaths from the virus in the UK this summer compared to last year? We know there's been a big increase in infection rates.
Yeah.
But is that people dying from COVID or people dying with COVID?
That's a really good question, because when you see that point blank on paper, it does look like we're having a lot more COVID deaths, and then people will question, what about the vaccine program, or what's happening? Why is there more COVID? Is it increasing? But I think that is due to people being tested. As in, so when you're tested positive with COVID, this will go on your death record that COVID has had an influence potentially in your cause of death. You may not necessarily die from a complication of COVID. However, if you've tested positive for COVID at the time of when you've been deceased, that's what's going to drive up the numbers. And that's what happens when you're testing more people, because you're detecting COVID in people who otherwise you wouldn't have really known, or it wouldn't have mattered because that wasn't their cause of death.
Yeah.
So in a word, yes or no, do you think it's a good idea that we stop testing for COVID at A&E?
No, because we're still testing people who come in with symptoms. Obviously, people who come in with respiratory distress, shortness of breath,
yes, that would be natural.
or breathing and fever.
But people who don't have symptoms of COVID?
People who don't have symptoms, I think at this point, that's the least of our worries. I think actually trying to get people in the A&E and treat them and trying to get people from ambulances to the street is far more important now as a resource than actually testing people who don't have symptoms with COVID.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because we're going to show this clip now. You might have seen the video circulating in social media of the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay. Well, he was being interviewed outside a hospital, and then he was confronted by a pretty angry lady.
Has protected. Are you going to do anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we
12 years, you've done all about it. People have died, and all you've done is nothing.
What do you make of that lady?
Honestly, I feel her frustration, to be honest, because that's the kind of frustration that we see people coming through the doors, patients, families, especially when you've had to wait hours for an ambulance, then your family member had to wait hours in A&E to be seen by a doctor or a professional. You're thinking, all this money is pumped into the NHS, where is it going? Because when it gets down to the very root of it, regardless of what they say about, economic distribution and management, my relative is supposed to have an ambulance within this much. We expect when we call an ambulance and say it's an emergency, we expect to be taken, we expect to be seen. And it's just not happening for a lot of these patients and a lot of these family members. And so you can see the venting and frustration bubbling up and coming out there, just as we saw in the video.
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly how I felt in the last few days. A couple of members of my family needed to call an ambulance, two completely separate issues, and had to wait hours and hours and hours, and kept ringing back 999, and all the rest of it. And in the end, the ambulance service, or the lady on the 999 end, said, "I just cannot promise you an ambulance. I am going to now press a button and see if we can send you a taxi." And both members of the family were taken separately by taxi to hospital hours later. And yes, I can understand the frustration.
Yeah.
What's causing it? Is there an absolute shortage of ambulances or of paramedics? Or is it the fact that ambulances are they seem to be parked up outside the A&E?
It's multifactorial, because you have some of the shortage in the workforce, which we've had for years, so this is expected. But then like I've said previously, you have the issue with bed space and trying to get people into social beds and actually discharged from hospital so we can get people from the A&E department into the wards, and then ambulances wouldn't be standing there for hours trying to get people in, because it's not safe for them to leave whoever they've picked up from their home or from the street in an ambulance and leave to go collect someone else until that patient has safely been admitted into our care in the emergency department or admitted straight onto the wards.
So in many cases, some patients are being treated still inside the ambulance by people, doctors and nurses from A&E, are giving them things like X-rays and blood tests inside the ambulance still, keeping that ambulance there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had to go into the ambulance and treat and see these patients, because you don't want patients sitting there without treatment. If something's genuinely wrong with you and I can do a VBG, a venous blood gas or an arterial blood gas on you to see exactly what I need to give you, if I have to give you fluids in the ambulance immediately, I need to find that out. And sometimes we just don't have the space to bring them in to the department. And so we will have to leave and go and see those people in the ambulances, which then means these ambulances can't be on the roads actually picking up people that they need to. So it's a huge backlog and it's multifactorial. So I think there are a number of changes that we must see.
I was looking for the email, but I can't find it, unfortunately. But someone got in touch earlier on and said, the NHS, I mean, yes, there's a money issue.
Yeah.
There always is. It's a bottomless pit, we know that. But it needs to be reformed, and politicians are too scared to do it because everyone throws their arms up in the air and say, oh, nurses, we can't touch it. But do you think there needs to be root and branch reform?
I think possibly to this point there must be, because with what we've seen, the NHS has struggled at times, and in the best of times throughout the years where I've been training, and I've been a doctor now 6 years, and even before that when I was a med student, and we were still training within the NHS. But now with COVID, and now you add the backlog from a lot of the elective stuff, a lot of the elective operations and appointments that people were supposed to have, now they're being pushed into A&E because their symptoms are troubling them too much and they haven't been able to see a doctor, haven't been able to see their GP. They're coming into A&E, which is clogging us up, clogging the ambulances up, clogging hospital beds up. It's coming to a point where, like you've said, we've seen some of these cases where people weren't seen on time from ambulance where they could have been and unfortunately passed away. People staying for hours when they're being told to get taxis, which may not necessarily be the safest option. Because if something happens to you in a taxi because you're very unwell, it's a very different outcome if something happens in your ambulance where you have the resources to be able to treat it, be treated on the road. And so I think something probably does have to happen at this point for us to be able to sustain this system.
OK. Dr Okorocha, good to talk to you as always. Arlene will be very happy with what you just said there, because you agreed with her. She said, why are A&E so full? Because no one can see the normal GP for minor ailments. So everyone's going to A&E, and that's why the hospitals are full. If we can get back to see GPs, maybe it will lighten the hospital load for real emergencies. Well,
root and branch
the
reform.
doctor agrees with you.
Yes.
Keep your thoughts coming through. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're going to take you through the papers in just a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you. Time for the papers then this morning with Ella Whelan and Benjamin Butterworth. So let's kick off, Ella, with you, should we? And the Times. And police officers, there's been this issue about banter going too far, but they're getting now scared to use any sort of banter in the office at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, so obviously you have to, first of all, caveat everything with the fact that in relation to the police, particularly the Met, there has been an issue with some pretty disgusting WhatsApp messages being sent around, you know, in relation to Nicole and Bieber. The police officers found to be sending images of victims on WhatsApp and things like that. So, you know, it's well known that, in particular, the Met has been put in special measures for various reasons, but one of them being that there's been a lot of pretty horrible, bordering on kind of misogynistic stuff being flying around WhatsApp. And Maggie Blythe, who was appointed by the National Police Chiefs Council to kind of deal with this and tackle some of the issues within the Met, obviously knows that that's an important thing. But as a sort of side issue, she's mentioned here in the Times that tackling that doesn't necessarily mean that you'd then bring in the kind of regulation into the workplace that would outrule any kind of informal discussion or banter.
They're all going to be on tenterhooks, though, aren't they?
Well, I mean, it's a bit difficult talking about this in relation to the police because you think there are some sections of the workforce in which you just got to be at the height of professionalism. Don't be making these, don't be making these kind of jokes, but it's hard to talk about this in the current context of what's going on with the police. But it's important that some of these kind of restrictions of bans on jokes, bans on staring, whatever that means, regulation of language in the workplace has been happening in offices, call centres, places where you're not dealing with very sensitive material like you might be within the police. And I think that probably is a problem because we know that most people spend the majority of their waking hours at work. You can, for a lot of people, work is only made bearable by the people who you work with, particularly if you're doing kind of tedious, mundane, repetitive stuff. And if you can't, in the canteen, have a joke, have a flirt. Lots of people meet their partners at work, for example, because workplace romance is, you're too knackered to go out. So that kind of regulation, I think she's right to say that banter is a bit of a loaded word because people think it's used as an excuse for bad behaviour. But I think you can tackle sexism and nasty behaviour without going full kind of Mary Whitehouse and saying no discussion of anything fun at work.
It is difficult because one man's banter is another person's completely offensive language and offensive culture. And I think it's very difficult to know where to draw the line if you're a boss.
But that's the thing, if you're a boss, but I think most employees can work it out together. I think most employees can say to each other, oh, that's a bit far. And then you go that way rather than jumping to the HR regulation.
Yeah. Let's talk Her Majesty and the Prime Minister, whoever that may be, Benjamin.
Whoever. It's a mystery, but I think we have a good idea that it's going to be another Liz, judging by the polls. Well, the Queen is usually, obviously, when there's a new Prime Minister, they go and meet her at Buckingham Palace and they're appointed and they drive back and we all follow from the helicopter.
That's right.
Well, it looks like this time it's not going to happen because she's in Balmoral, which is her Scottish home where she spends most of the summer. And according to the Sun newspaper today, she's going to stay there on the 6th of September, the date that the new occupant gets the post. And they will instead have to fly up and see her or travel up somehow. Good luck getting a plane or a train.
Yes. Maybe they'll do it by Zoom.
And she'll... I can't imagine they'll do that.
I don't know, the Queen's very good at Zoom.
She is. But you get the photograph, and it's called the kiss of the hand, right? You know, when she formally makes them the head of the government. And so, according to The Sun, this is how it's going to happen this year. And that's because, I say this year, we have a new PM every year, seemingly. And the reason for that is because she has mobility issues, and doctors have recommended that she shouldn't be travelling back down to Windsor Castle, which is now her permanent, regular home.
Quite right. Make the Prime Minister come and see you.
Do you think?
That's the pecking order anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister should go and see her.
I mean, it's quite a long journey, but, you know, to get from here to Balmoral.
No, but it's a long journey for the Queen to come down just to do that one.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's the first time, and actually they do reference that Prince Charles has been taking on an awful lot of the duties that the Queen would normally do. But a source says that this is the one thing she absolutely will not hand over. You know, the monarch is the one that appoints the Prime Minister.
The monarch is the monarch is the monarch.
Exactly.
I love the headline in the front page of The Sun, though. The Queen will see you new, Prime Minister.
Very good.
Appallingly anti-Scottish, but you know what I mean. I think that's just very funny.
I wonder if The Sun in Scotland has the same,
that's
front page.
Oh, that's a fair
that's
point.
a very good point.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah. If you're watching from Scotland, let us know, please.
We've got a copy of The Sun.
There's the Sun here, down south. But what is the headline up there in Scotland?
Yes.
That would be very interesting to see.
Won't be that.
If you were editing The Sun on Sunday, in Scotland, you'd say, I don't think that's really appropriate.
Exactly.
Fair point. I hate to say it, but we're out of time. It's been a tight, busy morning. But
well,
Ella,
lots happened.
Benjamin, thank you both very much.
Energy price cap and everything, yeah.
Yes, and also a big immigration story, because GB News has learnt that a massive 60% of those currently arriving across the Channel in small boats are from Albania, which is a tiny nation of less than 3 million people.
Now there's an emergency agreement between the UK and Albania, and that's going to come into force next week, aiming to rapidly remove those Albanians who arrive by small boat and who the government believes have no right to be here.
And as our Home and Security editor Mark White reports, those Albanians who enter the UK illegally could be on a flight home within just a few weeks.
Arriving into Dover Harbour, the Border Force vessel Ranger, her decks packed with Channel migrants, most likely to be from Albania. In fact, we can confirm that 60% of those currently arriving into UK waters on small boats are from that tiny nation. In truth, this is a crisis within a crisis, which has so concerned UK authorities, it resulted in what amounts to an emergency agreement between the UK and Albanian governments to rapidly remove those with no right to asylum. The British government believes that's likely to be the vast majority of those arriving from what is a peaceful nation on the Balkan Peninsula. We've been told that 6 in 10 of those arriving on small boats at the moment are from Albania, more than 6,000 already this year and growing rapidly. Compare that to just 2 years ago, when only 50 Albanians arrived by small boat. Here in the Albanian capital, Tirana, this is also an existential crisis for those in government here, as the country faces rapid depopulation. Since the 90s, the population has fallen by more than 15% and now numbers fewer than 2.8 million people. The crisis is most acute in Albania's rural towns and villages, where the vast majority of their young have up sticks and left. In fact, Albania is one of the few nations in the world where there are more of its people living outside than inside the country. As part of the agreement with the UK, Albanian law enforcement officials will be seconded here to the Border Force processing centres at Dover Harbour and the former RAF base at Manston. We're told they'll help gather intelligence on arrivals and quickly assess those with no right to be here. Officials hope those individuals could be removed within 2 or 3 weeks of arriving. However, there's little doubt asylum lawyers will try to challenge those decisions. Nothing surrounding this growing crisis is ever straightforward. Mark White, GB News.
We've been talking about it all morning. It's such an incredible thing that in Albania there's only, what did we say?
2.8.
2.8 million people. And there's an awful lot now coming to Britain. What,
Yes.
at 8:50?
Oh, who's ringing you?
You'd think somebody would know I was on air. I don't know.
Louisa.
What I said. Yeah, that's my sister. She
Oh.
knows. I'm working.
There you go.
It's 8:51. Time for On Your Doorstep.
How do I disable the sound? This is what I get with every person I've ever worked with all my life.
Yeah.
It's been, oh, how'd you do that?
Well, gorgeous young men are there to
Young.
tell us how to work our tech, don't they?
Oh, Anna, you can't think I'm nearly 50.
To me, you're a gorgeous young man.
Anyway, our gorgeous young Doogie Beattie's in Northern Ireland this morning. Morning to you, Doogie.
Good morning. Not too sure about gorgeous or young. Getting up this early in the morning doesn't do any good to you. But yes, I'm here in Lough Neagh, and of course Lough Neagh being such a big lough, I mean 5 out of 6 counties of Northern Ireland touch the lough with the exception of Fermanagh. That's how big it is. And of course it may need a rescue unit there. And joining me now is Desi London. He is one of the team here in Antrim. Desi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Desi London, part of Lough Neagh Rescue, and as you can see in the chart here, we cover the whole of the lough. And if I just break it down for you a bit, this is where we are here. This is the Antrim station up here, and the Antrim station cover roughly this area here. We have another station down here at Arboe who cover this whole area of the lough, and another station down at Kinnigo, which is down here, which covers it. The idea of the 3 stations was to triangulate the whole lough so as we could cover the whole lough. As you see, it's about 16 mile long, it's an average of about 8 or 9 mile wide, and we have a crew of roughly about altogether of about 70 volunteers, and they're all volunteers on the lough, split into the 3 stations.
Well, we'll take a look at some of the equipment that you have here. I mean, yous are not government funded as far as me. I mean, yous are pretty much a charitable organisation, and talk us through some of this equipment.
Yeah, we are a charity organisation, but we do get help from a couple of the councils in Northern Ireland. The Antrim station here gets help from the Antrim and Newton Abbey Borough Council. They fund us a certain amount of money every year. Obviously, that money doesn't cover what we have to do, so the rest is all done by fundraising and all sorts of charity events and stuff like that. This is the latest boat that came in. We're kitting this boat out now. This will be used on the lough from Antrim. But this is the latest one. It's not quite ready yet. It's being customised and getting ready for action. Round the other side is, you'll see, is a smaller boat. The reason for the smaller boat in the Antrim, because we cover mostly the Antrim Bay and further out, the big boat is not great for getting into the sides of the lough, and there's a lot of sandbanks and stuff in Antrim Bay. So we use this boat mainly at the minute, which takes us into all the areas of where we need to go into. It's more agile. It can go into places where the big boats can't go, and very regular we get calls that the big boat can't go into, so this boat will be used.
Well, there you go. There you've had it. Older is sometimes better, and smaller is sometimes better. I'm only 5'6", Dan, so that probably says a whole lot.
Fair point, Doogie. Can't argue with that. Good to see you. Talking of tall, Dr. Emeka.
Was
6'6".
Is that right? Yeah.
6'6". I tell you, when he walks in.
But when he left, he asked for a picture.
Yes.
And it looks ridiculous because I look like
You're not the tallest person in the world.
No, and you're tall anyway.
I'm 6 foot and I look tiny next to him.
It looked ridiculous.
Isn't
frankly.
it funny?
Yeah.
Well, I love all that sort of stuff, though.
I know. He's really cool, isn't he?
I tell you what I like is when you see, because all these young men and women are all really tall these days. But you know, like donkeys years ago, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and all that sort of thing, where they had those, the grey aliens.
Oh yes,
which is what they
tall,
always
thin ones.
They're always very tall and thin, and now all these young people are very tall and thin. I wonder if we're
being invaded.
I think we're evolving into a more, advanced
Except
society.
I'm not. I'm clearly the other.
No.
I'm de-evolving.
You're de-evolving. Anyway, look, we've got much more to come for you, including more on the GB News People's Polls. Your thoughts and opinions on all political parties. Got more for you in a minute.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter, some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales and the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers start to drift northeastwards. They tend to ease, but a few of them will keep going. And then a lot of cloud in this zone from eastern Scotland into parts of northern and central England. Where we've got the cloud, temperatures staying up in the double figures, but actually where we've got some clear spells, cool night to come, especially for northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, 5 to 9 Celsius in places here. But that's where the best of the sunshine will be first thing this weekend. Some cloud elsewhere across eastern Scotland into northern and central England. And where we've got that cloud, a few showers will get going by the afternoon. They'll be fairly well scattered, and away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells. And with light winds, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Temperatures up into the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north. Similar conditions prevail for Sunday and, of course, Bank Holiday Monday. Plenty of sunny spells and light winds. Feeling a bit cooler on the coast, and there'll be the odd shower inland, but otherwise plenty of warm sunshine.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrar.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A new energy price cap has been announced this morning, and it's not good news. It increases to more than £3,500 a year from October.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Friday the 26th of August. It's a bank holiday weekend ahead. But this is Breakfast on GB News today, this Friday, with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK, online, on your radio, on your TV, wherever you are and whatever you're up to today, you can take us out and about with you.
Here are your top stories then this morning. Ofgem have said that the energy price cap will jump to £3,549. That's from the current £1,971. This will come into effect from the 1st of October. Our reporters right out across Britain are getting your reactions.
I'm Alice Porter and I'll be finding out how the increase to the energy price cap will be affecting households across London.
I'm Jeff Moody.
Oh, apologies, we lost Jeff Moody there, just very briefly. A GB News People's poll finds the majority of Brits would rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer than a Conservative government under Truss or Sunak. How much of a concern should this be for the leadership hopefuls?
And on a lighter note, it's International Dog Day. That's a day to celebrate our canine friends. And we're lucky enough to have one in the studio with us a bit later on.
We'd love to hear from you. Of course, as always, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And talking of you, morning to you. Do you know, I love the GB News family. Robert has been in touch and said, what's that badge on Stephen's lapel? And thank you for a great programme. Weeks and weeks ago, we were talking about what clan...
Scottish clan
we're from. And I was Clan Dixon, is part of Clan Keith. And one of you, whose name, whoever it was who sent this in for me, one of our lovely viewers and listeners, I can't remember your name now, but I did at the time, but you didn't include your address, so I couldn't write back to you or anything. But this is the Clan Keith badge.
It's very
and they
stylish.
sent it through, so I thought, do you know what? I'm going to wear this on my suit with this suit.
It goes. It looks very good.
So thank you for sending it in.
And thank you so much for... I mean, we are inundated with reactions from you, really, about, well, everything, particularly the energy price cap, also the, politicians and what they're doing about the cost of living crisis, and about ambulance waiting times, which has got people absolutely joining in. We showed earlier the clip of the lady who sort of accosted Steve Barclay, the MP, as he was giving an interview, and walked up to him and she said, you've had 12 years in power, why haven't you done anything about the ambulance service? People are dying. And it was a very embarrassing moment for him, but, one hopes that it gets through to somebody, really, in power, that something needs to be done. Does it need root and branch reform, as they call it, in the National Health Service?
Denise says in Kent, the problem is A&E is condensed down. Kent has got 20 hospitals, but only 4 or 5 A&E units. Is it any wonder ambulances are queuing? You can't get a quart in a pint pot.
True. Absolutely. We've had so many. We'll go through a lot of these a bit later on, but thanks for getting in touch. And do continue to do so. We'll be reading out a lot more of those in a couple of moments.
Yeah. Now, millions of us finding out, or have found out this morning, came out at 7 o'clock, what the new energy price cap is. It was announced by Ofgem.
Yes, that's the industry regulator, and it says the energy price cap is going to increase from the current 1,971, that's £1,971, to, wait for it, £3,549. We were warned, but it's horrible when you see it, isn't it? The energy price relates, of course, to customers on standard tariffs, and that will come into effect on the 1st of October.
OK, let's head out and about to a few of our reporters this morning. Alice Porter and Jeff Moody are across various parts of the country for us. Alice, where are you? What are people saying there?
Hi there, good morning. Well, I'm just here in Paddington, just around central London, and I have to say we knew that this news was coming, but it doesn't make the blow any less painful. And I think particularly when we look at London, we have to look at this, the increase to the energy price cap, in the context of what an expensive city this is for people to already live and work in. I mean, many people are already priced out, unable to buy a property in London. Many people, particularly over the last few months, are really, really struggling to even rent. It's very, very expensive to commute into the country and to this capital, and people having to spend thousands and thousands of pounds. So I think we have to kind of look at the wider context of how the cost of living is impacting people in London. And so to have this very, very much a dramatic, a 1,500 increase to the energy price cap is really going to impact people in the capital. And we've always heard for a long time people say, yes, London's expensive, but, people are paid more. But simply that is not as true anymore, because wages are not rising in line with inflation, which is true, of course, across the country. So I've been been out and about speaking to people who are absolutely devastated by the news today. And they were talking to me about how they're struggling with the cost of living crisis.
You know, I'm lucky enough that this next price cap rise might not mean we can't buy food, but it's a pattern that means that things become more difficult for us, and maybe if it happens again, we're in trouble.
It is hard, and the only solution I've got at the moment is possibly moving in one of my kids, their wife and two of my grandchildren, so I can make ends meet.
There's definitely been a massive increase in the supermarkets. I mean, I shop in there, in some even in the budget supermarkets like Lidl's, Aldi. The prices have changed dramatically in the sort of like the last sort of 3 to 6 months.
What I'm definitely doing is you spend on what's important. What you don't need to do, you don't do it, and try and budget as much as possible. But try not to be so terrified, because it is actually quite demoralizing listening to the news. But what can you do? We have to wait and see. Hopefully things will get better.
Well, quite a range of views there. It gave me quite an indication there of the man who was speaking there, who was having to move back in with his children there because he's absolutely struggling to make ends meet. And he was a man of, I think, 62 at a time where you'd be hoping to sort of look to retirement, but he was saying he'd have to keep working and sadly was going to have to move back in with his children to make ends meet. So a really, really, really sad picture from so many people I spoke to. I mean, I suppose the government, of course, would say that from October there is some help that will be available to households. There'll be a £400 rebate. The question is that going to be enough for people who are struggling at the moment? And could the situation get even worse? Because, of course, it was every 6 months that Ofgem would be reviewing the energy price cap. That's now happening every 3 months. So I think the real worry is whether this could get even worse in January.
Yeah, well, it is a concern. Alice, thank you.
And now let's cross to Jeff. Jeff, where are you and what are people saying there?
Hello, well, I'm at the White Horse in Droxford in Hampshire, and I've been speaking to the landlord and landlady of the pub who have decided that really enough is enough and they just can't carry on as things are. So they're selling up and moving on. Let's have a quick word with them. Shaker and Alex, just step forward for us. Hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So tell us what brought you to this decision.
I mean, it's not completely our decision. The rising costs and currently what the situation has been thrown at us we were not prepared for this. After the COVID situation was still not comfortable with the people to come out, and then suddenly we trapped into the situation where the rising cost, fuel is rising. There is no comparison to how much it is, the price-wise. We can't cope up in our books. So we tried to renegotiate with the terms with brewery, that if they can do subsidized rent or anything but for going forward for 6 months or a year, so we can sustain the cost for the longer time and sign up another deal. But as you all know that we are a fully tied up pub and we're trying hard to make ends meet at this stage. And on top the rising side of the cost in the supplies and the groceries, the fuel, and on top of the losing basically the trade which we were having it because of the confidence is back not in the market. So we are kind of struggling to cope up with the rising cost. And we have no other option but no answer basically, because we can't control these sudden rise in the cost. And they are not just basic like 5-10%, they are doubled in cost. So we are all, and I mean most of the business I assume that they are all suffering, and might be coming 6 months will be very hard for any business to carry on like this. So we have decided whatever best we can do to swiftly say goodbye to our locals and carry on whatever best we can do.
OK, for now, thank you very much indeed. We'll be returning to them both a little later in the morning to get a more detailed look at their story. But for now, back to you.
OK, Jeff and Alice, thank you. Let's talk to our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who's here in the studio. I mean, this is a crisis for people at home. And as we heard there from Jeff, a crisis for businesses as well.
Well, the way I describe it, Stephen, is shocking, but not surprising. We've been saying this would happen for months and months and months. This is all baked into the wholesale gas prices, the prices on European markets, of course, which were elevated before the war in Ukraine and have been going gangbusters ever since then. The prices on wholesale markets have been up 45% in August alone. And this Ofgem energy price cap now, which is the average cost, I know you guys have been saying that throughout the morning, and it's correct, that's the average cost. It's a cap on the unit cost, and of course households use varying number of units. That's up 80%, as you said, Anne, now to £3,549. 80% increase. It's up threefold over the last year. I'm astonished that the government has let it get to this point. The Conservative Party has had a leadership contest going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. That it looked indulgent. It now looks pretty reckless that we've got to this point. People listening to us on the telly who don't follow these things really closely, knowing that the average energy bill is going to go up to like 40% of the basic state pension, there will be real anguish out there.
What could the government actually do?
There are various different things we can do. Now, in fairness, when he was Chancellor, Rishi Sunak unveiled a package that kind of worked back then before wholesale energy prices went up even more. Everyone's going to get £400 off their energy bill. Then about a quarter of households will get a £1,200 rebate on their energy bills. But that's not nearly enough when your energy bill's £3,500 and likely to go up again, I hate to say it, in January. Labour wants to cap the price. That, of course, will cost tens of billions, hundreds of billions of pounds, because if the wholesale price is here and the price that people pay is here, someone's got to pay the difference. No one's going to give gas away. The question is, how do you pay that money? Does the government give the money to the energy companies in a kind of tariff discount scheme, and then they charge us less and then they charge us more in the future to make up for that? Does the government give the money to people? In that sense, it's difficult to target. You don't want to be giving lots of money to people who are already quite well off. So that there are different ways that we can do it. The devil will be in the detail. But as I said, what I'm really shocked about is that we've got to this point with no scheme in place. This estimate of the price cap, it's within £50 of what people like me have been saying for months. We didn't need to get to this point.
No, I mean, you were talking about pensioners and people, what sort of proportion of a pension it could be. Anthony has already emailed in and said, I'm already paying £3,500 for dual fuel, both for my wife and I are pensioners. Will this will mean that we're now going to have to pay £5,000 100, which would be 25% of our pensions.
Unbelievable.
I mean, how are people going to manage?
And Anne, you know, it's still quite warm outside.
Yes.
As the nights draw and as it gets colder. And I tell you what, it's really good that just in the reports from me, Jeff Moody there, he was at a business in Hampshire, just a run-of-the-mill, you know, a couple trying to make their way, trying to run a pub. There is no price cap at all for business. If you're running a laundrette, a pub, a small-scale manufacturer, we've got so many small and medium-sized manufacturers across those red wall seats in the North and the Midlands that are very energy-intensive. They're little steelworks, they're little, engineering companies, tool-making companies. Their energy bills are going up multiples, 3, 4, 5-fold. After lockdown, for many companies, this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, unless, as well as helping households, government finds a way to help businesses
small
as well.
businesses were meant to be what Conservative Party's all about.
Absolutely right.
You've got a special programme today, haven't you?
We do On the Money every day, as you know, Monday to Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. Today, GB News, we're extending it to 2 hours, 1 to 3 p.m. We'll have lots of people on, lots of experts, and hopefully lots of GB News viewers and listeners as well. Trying to get our arms around this issue and basically conveying to the government the urgency of this situation.
Yeah. Okay,
Well, John,
Liam.
one of our GB viewers says, I would say, would the last one to leave Britain please turn the lights off, except that we couldn't afford to switch them on in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, isn't it? Liam, thank you very much indeed. I was trying to find... we've got so many views this morning. I keep losing track of
Tell me
one.
what it said and I might be able to find
There
it.
was a great one about what we did in the war and what we need to do. Here we go. Barbara. Morning, Barbara.
Morning.
She says, I know how these energy bills will make a lot of people suffer, but I think we all have to try and save some of the energy. Nothing wrong with putting a blanket over your knees watching TV or when you're on your iPad. A blanket on the bed too will help. We had to manage in the last war with much harsher sacrifices, so I'm sure we can do it now. And I think that's the reality. We are going to have to change our reality of how we behave.
Yes, I mean, a lot of people, when you talk to them, they say it's ridiculous that this is happening now in the 21st century. Maybe it's not. Maybe, you know, we have to go through ups and downs. 1970s wasn't particularly good when we had a 3-day week.
Anyway, keep all your thoughts coming through, because if we can't get through them today, but Liam is certainly going to pick up on some of them this afternoon from between 1 and 3. All this, though, does lead to the big question, because, of course, it gets very, very political. Have the wheels come off the Conservative Party?
Well, a GB News People's poll finds that the majority of Brits would prefer a Labour government with Keir Starmer at the helm rather than a Conservative government under either Truss or Sunak.
Well, it comes as Labour has a 14% lead at the moment over the Tories.
The findings were conducted by People Polling, and they also discovered that the word that comes to mind the most about the frontrunner, Liz Truss, is, she won't like this, untrustworthy.
Well, earlier we spoke to Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, that's Matthew Goodwin, who talked us through some of these findings.
Wheels are coming off. A 14-point lead for the Labour Party is essentially a Labour majority, were that to be replicated at the next general election. And, you know, reminding ourselves, the Conservatives took a huge gamble by deciding to get rid of Boris Johnson and elect somebody new. What we can see in these numbers is that actually a lot of people now have tuned out. They're not lining up behind the Conservatives. Keir Starmer and Labour are comfortably ahead in the polls. And this really is going to pile pressure on whoever becomes the next leader of the party and whoever becomes the next Prime Minister. There is a risk here, clearly in these numbers, that if things don't change, the Conservatives are looking at a sort of 1997-2001 scenario where they not only lose that all-important red wall in Northern England, but they also lose a large chunk of that blue wall across the south, and that would be a nightmare scenario for the party.
So that, I mean, this is a clear case, is it, of the government losing an election, as it were, rather than the opposition winning one. And is that down, I mean, do you think that is down to all this hoo-ha and this very long, it seems like a very long leadership battle between these two people that is just turning people off?
Well, I think you just saw what's playing out in the clip that you just showed and what Anne was mentioning about the problems your friends and relatives have been having just trying to get an ambulance. I think the problem facing the Conservative Party at the moment is that it simply looks adrift from the problems that are facing the rest of the country. And when a political party or a governing party is seen to be on its own side and not on the side of the people, things start to fall apart very quickly. So, you know, if I were sort of in Team Truss or in Team Sunak or whoever ends up running number 10 from September 5th, the first priority is, I think, they've got to re-establish a relationship with the country as quickly as possible, which is holding their hands up and say, you know, this hasn't been a great summer for the Conservative Party. The government's made a lot of mistakes. But here's a plan for the winter. Here's a plan for how we're actually going to get through the most difficult period in 50 years.
And Liz Truss herself, who is guaranteed, or they say guaranteed to get it, certainly the front runner by the sound of it, she doesn't do very well herself up against, in your poll, up against Keir Starmer, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. So if you ask voters, would you rather have a Labour government under Keir Starmer or a Conservative government under Liz Truss? Keir Starmer currently wins hands down, not even close. If you then say to voters, what do you think about Liz Truss? Just tell me one word. What comes to mind? We're not, you know, putting words in voters' mouths. We're saying, give us a word. And the dominant theme is untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Because why would people necessarily say that? I mean, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know enough about her to say whether she's trustworthy or not.
So that is a very valid point, but here's what I think is going on. The Conservative brand has become so tarnished over the last few months that actually it's infecting everybody within that party. And if Liz Truss becomes the next Prime Minister, the immediate priority for her team will be to draw a line between the last administration and her administration, because that legacy, you know, the chaos, the turmoil, the division, is already clearly damaging her brand in the eyes of many voters.
Do you think part of the problem has been during this leadership election that both candidates are they're addressing the Tory faithful because they're the only people with a vote on this? They're not actually saying the things that rather might be more popular for a general election, appealing to the masses of people.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think if you ask people what are the top issues in the country, they say, I want to talk about the cost of living, I want to talk about ambulances, GPs, public services, but I also want to talk to some extent about things like migration, but they also want to talk about things that the candidates haven't really gone anywhere near. It isn't just the Channel crossings. They want to talk about the level of overall migration in the country, which in the eyes of many people is still too high. And that conversation hasn't really been taking place. So there's the broader problem here facing the party, I think, is it's got to come out of the gates with a compelling, big, bold idea about what it's going to do over the next, not just 1 or 2 years, but over the next 4, 5, 6 years. What's the big plan for getting us through this cost of living crisis?
We need a plan.
We do, and a lot of people are getting in touch saying, why doesn't Rishi Sunak give up the leadership battle, join forces with Liz Truss, and together they sort this out starting tomorrow? Why not?
Be interested to find out. Anyway, don't go anywhere because we're going to cheer you up in a couple of minutes. It's International Dog Day and we're going to be back with a very, very friend. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter, some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales and the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers start to drift northeastwards. They tend to ease, but a few of them will keep going. And then a lot of cloud in this zone from eastern Scotland into parts of northern and central England. Where we've got the cloud, temperatures staying up in the double figures, but actually where we've got some clear spells, cool night to come, especially for northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, 5 to 9 Celsius in places here. That's where the best of the sunshine will be first thing this weekend. Some cloud elsewhere across eastern Scotland into northern and central England. And where we've got that cloud, a few showers will get going by the afternoon. They'll be fairly well scattered, and away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells. And with light winds, feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine. Temperatures up into the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Now, if you're listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on the radio, listen carefully and then check us out on the app because you're going to want to see this.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of bad news today, hasn't there? A lot of sort of pretty depressing stuff. But today we thought we'd give you a treat, and certainly a treat for us. We're celebrating International Dog Day. It is actually International Dog Day today.
Yes, and now let's just show you, this is Lulu, This is our floor manager, Chloe's dog, snuggling up with his favourite toy, or her favourite toy, Nelly. But you can't beat seeing the real thing in the studio.
So we've got with us Robin James, who's owner of Master Dog London, to talk about what this day means to him, as well as that fabulous little puppy he's brought with him.
Yeah, morning.
Good morning.
Introduce us.
So this is Robin, also
Robin and Robin.
Robin and Robin, a double Robin. Border Terrier, 8 weeks old. Just arrived on puppy boot camp. He's with me for 10 days.
Oh, so what's puppy boot camp? What do you do then?
So we have a puppy come to us from the breeders, comes to us for 10 days, comes to stay with me. It's a residential training programme, living with the dog trainer. I toilet train them, I socialise them, I make them obedient, I make them perfect.
Within 10 days?
Within 10 days.
How on earth do you do that?
I've been doing it for a really long time. I'm very good at what I do, and I really enjoy it. It's the most fabulous job ever.
If little Robin there belonged to me, I would come and stay with you as well for 10 days.
No.
Oh, how does it work then?
The puppy comes by themselves.
Yeah.
They stay with me. They play with me all day, and they get trained, and then they sleep at night, and train them to be dry through the night and to sleep nicely all the night. So, you know, owners, when they first receive their puppies, may have a few or many restless nights.
Yes.
So I fast-track them, take them straight through that.
So do you do it one at a time then?
Yes, usually one or sometimes two.
Right.
Wow.
So by the time they then get delivered back to their owner, they should be house-trained.
They're house-trained.
And they can sleep through the night without whining and mewing.
Exactly, but more importantly, they're really well socialised. They're really calm. They don't yap. They don't bark. They're just perfect dogs.
And you do this mostly through love, and intensive love, really?
Exactly. I have literally a revolving door of puppies all year round. It's the best job in the world. Love it. Absolutely
How do
love
people find out about it? Puppy boot camp, you call
it? Yeah, puppy boot camp. If you
Google that, you'll
dog,
find it.
puppy
Master
boot
dog.
You'll find me.
Wow.
Oh, it must be hard giving them back when they're that cute.
It's very hard giving them back.
Look, that's been an absolute tonic for us.
When I give one back, there's always another one coming
Well, that's true.
straight
Yes,
to me.
yes, like puppy walking, except you're puppy boot camping. Thank you so much for bringing him in. It's been an absolute tonic for us because
we've
we just needed it after today. There's been so much, depressing news, I suppose. How lovely to end with little Robin's face.
Yeah, so instead of looking at us, finish off on a shot of Robin as we head into the break. We're back 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll see you there.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A very different start to the day in the southeast. It's sunnier, it's drier, but it's also cooler. Sunny spells elsewhere as well, but also some showers developing. Actually, those showers are associated with a little feature, an occluded front that is now moving into western parts of the UK, bringing a lot of cloud cover and some outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will turn more showery by the afternoon, but they'll be focused across central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, into parts of northern and western England, as well as Wales. So if you're in one of these areas, expect some rain or showers through the morning and into the afternoon. The showers pepping up a bit across southern Scotland, the far north of England later. Northern Scotland, meanwhile, drier and brighter, some sunshine here and some sunshine for the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, where it will be cooler, less humid compared to recent days, but still 24, 25 Celsius, 18 to 21 for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and for Wales and the southwest, low 20s. Into the evening, the showers